Chapter 72. Just as Chu Xiu and the others were patiently waiting there, a commotion suddenly came from the foot of the mountain. A group of cultivators clustered around a few people as they walked up, greeting each other. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. It seemed like some important people had arrived. Chu Xiu turned his head and asked a slightly wretched-looking martial artist beside him, "Old Bao, do you know who's coming?" Old Bao was a local rogue martial artist in Luyang town. He was the guy who was almost hacked to death by Lu Yuanhai when Zhang Baitao and the others besieged Chu Xiu. Fortunately, he was saved by Lu Fengxian. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian met him when they returned to Luyang town. After thanking Lu Fengxian for saving his life, he stayed by their side. After all, he was only a body-tempering realm martial artist. It was an honor to be able to stay by the side of a Xiantian realm martial artist. Chu Xiu did not drive him away. Although Bao Laosan's strength was poor, he was the local bully of Liang town. Moreover, he was a gossipy person, so he knew a lot about the martial arts in the counties around Linzhong Commandery. With Bao Laosan's presence, Chu Xiu could get a lot of news. Old Bao's eyes showed a hint of envy when he heard that. He said, "Who else in the northern Yen land can have such a big show? Of course it's the young master of the Loyalty Village, Ling Yun Buyu Nye Donglu. Tiske, it's said that young Master Nye is talented and humble. He has connections all over the martial arts world. There's even a rumor that if you can become friends with young Master Nye, the Loyalty Village will always open its doors to you. It's a pity that I, Old Bao, am not capable enough. I won't have the chance to step into the Loyalty Village in this lifetime." Hearing Nye Donglio's name, Chu Xiu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He said indifferently, "The doors of the morgue will indeed be open to Nye Donglio's friends. However, if you want to be Nye Donglio's friend, you must be worthy. Worthless existences are not worthy of being his friend." Third Bao did not dare to say anything. The morgue was so famous in the northern Yen that even a low-level martial artist like him did not dare to say anything bad about it. Surrounded by the crowd, Nye Donglu had a smile on his face as he greeted the many warriors present. He recognized some of them, but most of them he didn't know. Regardless of whether these people were strong or weak, Nye Donglu took care of every aspect of his appearance, not leaving anything out. He gave off a feeling like a spring breeze, and attracted the praise of all the warriors present. After greeting everyone one by one, there were only a dozen people left beside Nye Donglu. These people were all from large clans or sects near Luyang Mountain. They all had experts in the 5th tier of the Qi-controlling realm, which was why they could chat and laugh with Nye Donglu here. Among them, a tall and handsome man in a golden robe stood up. He was even second to Lu Fengxian in appearance. He cupped his hands at Nye Donglu and said, "Young master, I heard that you've been in seclusion in the Loyalty Village. Why did you come to Luyang Mountain this time? I thought that the Loyalty Village would only send some ordinary disciples to have a look. I didn't expect you to come personally. Whether there are treasures in Luyang Mountain or not, you can't just leave like this. I recently found a batch of good wine. It's a 50-year-old drunken dragon incense. I'm waiting for you to taste it." Nye Donglu smiled and said, "Being in seclusion in the Loyalty Village is a bit boring. This is a good opportunity to relax. I heard that the Yu clan of Bailing Prefecture is preparing a marriage alliance with the Mu clan of Bailing Prefecture. Is this batch of drunken dragon incense going to be prepared for the engagement ceremony?" This young man was the eldest son of the Yu clan of Bailing Prefecture, Yu Luchuan of Linzhong Prefecture. The Yu clan had a very high status in Bailing Prefecture. When the Bailing Prefecture was mentioned, people would only think of the Yu clan. In Bailing Prefecture, the other small clans couldn't compare to the Yu clan at all. When Yu Luchuan heard Nye Donglio's question, his expression changed. He forced a smile and said, "It's just an engagement ceremony. It's not a big deal. When would the young master like to drink this drunken dragon incense? I'll prepare it immediately." Someone teased him, "Young Master Yu, are you not very satisfied with this marriage? The Mu clan's young lady is also very beautiful. Young Master Yu, weren't you very happy about it before? I heard that you went to Yen South a while ago and hooked up with the daughter of the Divine Martial sect leader in just a few months. I'm afraid you don't like that small clan in Bailing Prefecture anymore. Young Master, I'm afraid you won't be able to attend the engagement ceremony. Young Master Yu is probably planning to break the engagement, right?" Nye Donglu raised his eyebrows when he heard this. This was Yu Luchuan's family matter, so he didn't care. However, he was a little interested in the matter of Yu Luchuan hooking up with the Divine Martial sect's young lady. The Divine Martial sect was also a large clan in northern Yen, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. It was located in Yen South, but it was a little far from here. Linzhong Prefecture and Leping Prefecture were both in Yen East. However, the Divine Martial Sect was still one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, and was much stronger than the Yu clan. If Yu Luchuan could really marry the Divine Martial Sect, then the Yu clan's power would increase by a lot. Of course, Nie Donglu didn't care for such methods. He was a strong person. If he wanted to gain power, he could rely on methods and schemes, but he would never choose to rely on women. Most importantly, this guy was still engaged. If he broke the engagement now and went to find a higher power, the Yu clan's reputation would be tarnished. Yu Luchuan angrily pointed at the warrior and shouted, "Shut up! Don't spread rumors in front of the young master. When did the Yu clan plan to break the engagement? If you talk nonsense again, I won't let you off." Seeing that the tension between the two sides was rather strong, Nie Donglu quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. He said, "All right everyone. It is not worth fighting over such a small matter. By the way, does anyone know if Chu Xiu is on Luyang Mountain?" Everyone present had a perplexed look on their faces. To these warriors who came from large factions, whether it was Chu Xiu's annihilation of the Mountain Sun Prefecture's Zhang family or his massacre in Luyang town, these were considered trivial matters. Of course they had never heard of them. As for Zhang Baitao, although he was a disciple of the Ba Mountain Sword sect, this was northern Yen far away from West Chu. Except for the people of Shanyang Prefecture, no one else had even heard of Zhang Baitao's name. If an elder of the Ba Mountain Sword sect died here, it would probably cause a stir. At this moment, a person from a small aristocratic family in the vicinity of Luyang town walked out and said, "The Chu Xiu that young manor master mentioned, is he the Chu Xiu that killed 4 Xiantian realm martial artists in Luyang town?" Nie Donglu said, "Yes, that's him. Is he on Luyang Mountain now?" That warrior had the lowest status in this group. Usually he could only watch Nie Donglu talk and laugh with others. At this time he finally found a chance to interact with Nie Donglu. He quickly said, "I heard from the servants that he has been on Luyang Mountain for a few days. I'll take you there now, young master." Nie Donglu turned around and cupped his hands at the others. He said, "Everyone please chat first. I'll go get to know a rising young talent in the Jianghu. I'll bring him to you later." Everyone present nodded. They knew that Nie Donglu was forthright and loyal and liked to make friends. However, in their opinion, Nie Donglu should be making friends with warriors who came from powerful factions. What was the point of hanging out with those Jianghu ruffians who had no background? At this time, Chu Xiu was still chatting with Lu Fengxian. Third Bao, who was next to them, would interrupt from time to time, gossiping about the local Jianghu. At this time they felt that most of the people around them were looking at them. Chu Xiu looked up and saw a warrior walking toward them with Nie Donglu in a humble manner. Third Bao, who was behind them, opened his mouth wide. He had just been talking about Nie Donglu. He did not expect to see him in person so soon. This made him very excited. Coming to Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, Nie Donglu cupped his hands and said, "Are you brother Chu Xiu?" After that, Nie Donglu looked at Lu Fengxian and asked, "And this is?" Lu Fengxian said lightly, "Lu Fengxian of Yuyang in Yanxi, just a nobody." Nie Donglu thought about it and laughed out loud. "Young Marquis one is quite famous in Yanxi. How can you be a nobody?" Lu Fengxian was a little surprised. She did not expect Nie Donglu to even know his name. However, Lu Fengxian's expression was still calm. In fact, Lu Fengxian had a good impression of Nie Donglu. After all, there was no one in the entire northern Yen who would say bad things about Nie Donglu. However, after knowing the grudge between Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu, and listening to Chu Xiu's analysis of Nie Dongliu's character, Lu Fengxian now felt that Nie Dongliu's courteous and forthright smile was a little fake. In the original plot, the two of them were good friends. However, with Chu Xiu's interference in this life, the two of them were completely strangers. Chapter 73. Seeing Nie Donglu take the initiative to talk to Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, Lu Yangshan and the other wandering martial artists all looked envious, including Third Bao behind Chu Xiu. In northern Yen, to be chosen by the young master of the loyalty village and take the initiative to make friends with him proved that you were capable. It also proved that you could call yourself a good friend of Nie Donglu and use the name of the loyalty village to do things. Of course, since you claim to be from the morgue, if the morgue asked for your help or Nie Donglu asked for your help, you should agree as well. This was very normal in the eyes of others because for most martial artists, even if they wanted to help the memorial hall, they would not have the opportunity. Chu Xiu looked at Nie Donglu without any change in his expression. He said indifferently, "I am just a common person in the Jianghu. I have no right to be brothers with the young master of the loyalty village." Nie Donglu laughed heartily and said, "In the Jianghu, as long as there are like-minded people, we can all be brothers. Brother Chu, it seems that you still don't know what kind of person I am. To me, I only make friends based on their temperament and themselves, not their background. So what if you are a common person in the Jianghu? My loyalty village is a common person in the Jianghu. My father did not even have a decent weapon when he was young. My loyalty village does not care about background. We only gather the spirit of brotherhood in the Jianghu. And Ye Donglu am the same." Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, "Well said, young master. Unfortunately, I do not dare to be your friend now." "A what?" Nye Donglu raised his eyebrows and asked. Over the years, he had befriended countless martial artists of the pugilistic world. Most of them were happy to befriend him after knowing his identity and name. Even if they were not happy, they would rarely have the same attitude as Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Of course I'm afraid that after I become your friend, I'll be dragged into killing people because of a favor. If I'm unlucky and die in the hands of others, I won't even have someone to collect my body. Wouldn't that be very pitiful?" Chu Xiu looked straight at Nye Donglu and said indifferently, "Young master, the corpses of Zhang Baitao and the others are still strewn on the wasteland outside of Luyang town. Aren't you going to help them?" Upon hearing this, Nye Donglio's expression immediately darkened. As the middleman, he had helped Zhang Baitao contact Lu Yuanhai and the others to kill Chu Xiu. He actually knew about it. Idiot. He wasn't scolding anyone but Zhang Baitao and the others. He had already revealed his intentions to Zhang Baitao and the others at the Morgue village. The Morgue village would not get involved in the Jianghu vendetta. Otherwise, if there was one, there would be another. This kind of thing was not good for the Morgue village's reputation. Zhang Baitao and the others were not idiots. They should know what to do. Killing people was not idle chatter. Why would they talk so much in front of Chu Xiu? Of course, this matter could not be blamed on Zhang Baitao and the others. When they made their move, besides the people in the morgue, no one would think of Nye Donglu. However, when Zhang Baitao was killing Chu Xiu, he was afraid that Lu Yuanhai and the others would be hesitant. In a moment of desperation, he spat out the words, "Young master," which made Chu Xiu think of Nye Donglu. After Chu Xiu said this, Nye Donglu knew that it was impossible for him to recruit Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu did not know that he was in cahoots and helped Zhang Baitao to kill him, then Nye Donglu could openly recruit and befriend Chu Xiu. He just had to make sure that the disciples in the morgue who knew about this kept their mouths shut. Now that Chu Xiu knew about this matter, there was definitely no hope for him. No one could be thick-skinned enough to befriend someone after knowing that he had made such a great contribution to killing him. Of course, even if there was such a person, Nye Donglu would not dare to befriend such a person if he expressed that he did not care about these things. A person who could do this unless he was really an idiot was really patient. He was like a venomous snake. Nye Donglu did not dare to keep such a person by his side. After thinking this through, Nye Donglu said calmly to Chu Xiu, "If I said that it was a misunderstanding, would you believe me, brother Chu?" Chu Xiu also said indifferently, "Young master, do you think I would believe you? Moreover, even if I said I would believe you and that I did not care about that matter, would you believe me, young master?" Between the two of them, one would believe it and the other would believe it. The warrior who brought Nye Donglu and third Bao behind Chu Xiu were dumbfounded. They did not know what the two of them were talking about. Nye Donglu looked deeply at Chu Xiu, then turned around and left. The moment he turned around, Nye Donglio's face revealed a strong murderous intent, but it only lasted for a moment. To Nye Donglu there were only three kinds of people in the martial world. Friends, people who could become friends, and enemies. If Chu Xiu didn't know about this, Nye Donglu could recruit him without worry. Even if he didn't succeed, it didn't matter. After all, Nye Donglu didn't expect all the young elites in the world to be his friends. And if Zhang Baitao and the others died, then so be it. Forget about revenge, he didn't even have the interest to collect their corpses. However, the problem was that Chu Xiu now knew everything. Although the question of whether to believe or not sounded like a tongue twister, Nye Donglu actually understood what he meant. Chu Xiu was a sensible person. Since the grudge had already been formed, he could not join the morgue. Even if he joined, Nye Donglu would not believe him. Therefore, the grudge between the two could not be resolved. Chu Xiu was not his friend, nor could he become his friend. Therefore, he could only become his enemy. However, although Chu Xiu was strong, he was still a small fry in Nye Donglio's eyes. He had no backing, so he did not need to do it himself. He did not even need to mobilize the people from the morgue to kill Chu Xiu. That would only bring shame to himself and the morgue. Nye Donglu wanted to deal with a small fry. Since when did he have to do it himself? Returning to the group, Yu Luchuan and the others were surprised to see Nie Donglu return alone. Yu Luchuan asked, "Young master, didn't you go to recruit that Chu Xiu? Why didn't he agree?" Nie Donglu smiled bitterly and nodded. Yu Luchuan's expression darkened. He snorted coldly and said, "Young master, you personally went to befriend him. That is giving him face. Chu Xiu does not know what is good for him. He is shameless. He is just a little wandering cultivator. He really thinks he is someone." The others also nodded in agreement. Clearly they were thinking the same thing. Nie Donglu smiled bitterly and said, "Never mind. In reality this matter cannot be blamed on Chu Xiu. We have some misunderstandings between us. In the past, Chu Xiu destroyed the Zhang family of Mountain Sun Prefecture. In the end, the eldest son of the Zhang family, Zhang Baitao, who joined the Ba Mountain Sword sect and became an inner sect disciple, came back. Because of the destruction of the family, he came to me for help. But everyone should know that my Morgue village never participates in matters like killing in the Jianghu. So I refused Zhang Baitao. But who would have thought that Zhang Baitao secretly contacted 3 people in my Morgue village and promised them great benefits to help him kill Chu Xiu. They all died at Chu Xiu's hands. Now Chu Xiu thinks that I sent the 3. Alas, I didn't consider this matter thoroughly. After all, this matter happened in my mortuary manner. It's normal for Chu Xiu to misunderstand me. It's a pity that he reached the Xiantian realm at such a young age. If nothing unexpected happened, I really wanted to befriend him. Zhang Baitao is the same. While he killed his father, there is no need to be in such a hurry. Right now, he and the other 3 died at Chu Xiu's hands. I just learned of this. Their corpses were left outside Luyang village. We knew each other. After this matter is over, I will send people to bury them, and also have people send the news of Zhang Baitao's death back to Ba Mountain Sword sect. Nie Donglio's words pushed all the blame onto the dead men and Chu Xiu. Everyone who heard this was filled with righteous indignation and cursed these people for being despicable. Because the young master did not want to help him get revenge, Zhang Baitao privately contacted people in the Morgue village. He really broke the rules. And the 3 people in the Morgue village, because Zhang Baitao promised great benefits, privately agreed to help him kill people. They did not care about the reputation of the Morgue village. They were also not good people. The most infuriating was Chu Xiu. It clearly had nothing to do with the young master. It was a complete misunderstanding. But he could not tell right from wrong and dared to not give the young master face. He was being shameless. In the end, Yu Luchuan sighed emotionally. The young master is the young master. Zhang Baitao and the other 3 broke the rules. If it were me, I would not even care. Only a loyal person like the young master would want to help them collect their corpses. His voice changed. Yu Luchuan snorted coldly. "Young master, don't worry. Since Chu Xiu did not want face, I will go teach him a lesson and get revenge for you." Hearing Yu Luchuan's words, everyone present agreed. They wanted to use this opportunity to curry favor with Nie Donglu. In their eyes, Nie Donglu was just an ordinary Xiantian realm cultivator with no background. Wouldn't they be able to do anything to him? Chapter 74. The people on Nie Donglio's side were clamoring to teach Chu Xiu a lesson and stand up for Nie Donglu. However, Nie Donglu waved his hand and said, "It's just a misunderstanding. There's no need to do this. Everyone knows how I am. There's no need to get angry over one person." Everyone looked at each other and made up their minds. Even though the young master said they wouldn't cause trouble for Chu Xiu, they still had to find a chance to teach Chu Xiu a lesson and leave a deep impression in Nie Donglio's heart. Seeing everyone's gaze, Nie Donglu shook his head. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. To kill someone, one didn't need a sword but a human heart. Why was his father's nickname Heaven and Earth Flip? This nickname was not only because of his father's famous consummate skill, Heaven and Earth Cloud Hand, but also because of his father's ability to summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. With the strength of one person, he had developed the righteous manner into one of the 6 gangs of human harmony, a great force whose name shook the Jianghu. Since young, Nie Donglu had seen his father as his best role model. Killing with a sword was the lowest form of attack. On the Longhu Fengyun Supreme list, there were many in the top 20 who had achieved inner invulnerability, not to mention the top 10. Why was he ranked 6? Nie Donglu didn't just rely on his strength. He also relied on his methods. Meanwhile, on Chu Xiu's side, Lu Fengxian suddenly said, "This young master of the morgue is not a simple character. I'm afraid he's bearing a grudge against you this time. What if you held back and chose to befriend him and join the morgue?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's useless. Back then there were many people who saw that battle. When Zhang Baitao shouted the words young man or lord, many people heard it. Even if I feigned civility with Nie Donglu, he would find out as long as he asked the martial artists in Liang town. How many people in northern Yen can be called young master by Zhang Baitao? If Nie Donglu could guess such a simple thing, he must know that I could also guess it. Therefore, it would be useless to pretend to be courteous with him. However, this isn't a big deal. If he bears a grudge, so be it. The good thing about being a wandering martial artist is freedom. The barefooted are not afraid of those who wear shoes. There isn't any sect in Jianghu that can cover the sky with one hand. Even the Kunlun devil cult from 1,000 years ago was the same. Lu Fengxian nodded and said, that is indeed the case. I heard that a few years ago, a direct descendant of the celestial master's mansion of Mount Longhu died at the hands of West Chu's demonic path's rising star, heart hunter Tong Kaitai. He was brutally dismembered and his heart dug out. Mount Longhu sent out a large number of experts to search for him, but Tong Kaitai still managed to escape from West Chu. His whereabouts are unknown, and because of this matter he was ranked 23rd on the Longhu list. Chu Xiu nodded. The Jianghu was huge, but this world was even bigger. Even if it was the wind-sweeping building that was known as the world's leading wind broker or the Three Empires, they wouldn't be able to accurately detect everyone's movements. If they were forced into a corner, they could just burrow into the forests and hide for a period of time before coming out. Basically, nothing would happen. After all, there were always major events happening in the Jianghu. Who would be so bored to specifically keep an eye on one thing? Take for example the Wei County. It had already been a few months and the sects in the Wei County were initially giving face to the Azure Water Sword sect. They were paying attention to Chu Xiu's movements from their own territories. But after such a long period of time, there were no results. Who would pay attention to such matters? Perhaps even the Azure Water Sword sect themselves had slacked off, except for Shen Bai. Right now, on Mount Luyang, there were quite a number of martial artists gathered. In the center were the disciples of the major sects led by Nie Donglu. When night fell, a hazy green glow rose from the ground. Everyone could feel a tremor as if the earth was going to split open. This made some of the lower-level martial artists panic. Martial artists were also humans, especially these body-tempering realm martial artists. In the face of the mighty force of heaven and earth, their strength wasn't much stronger than ordinary people. Fortunately, this tremor didn't last for long before it stopped. On the next morning, everyone discovered that there was a crack on the east side of Mount Luyang. Even during the day, there was an aquamarine glow rising from it. This time, everyone immediately understood that there must be a treasure inside. Without the need for others to take action, a few of the surrounding aristocratic families and sects immediately sent their disciples to start digging from the palm-sized crack. Unfortunately, this crack was unfathomably deep and seemed to extend all the way into the ground. Hence, everyone gave up after a short attempt. But now that they could determine the location of the treasure, there were immediately people fighting for positions. No matter what, they had to be closer to the crack. In terms of strength and status, of course, Nie Donglu stood in the center while the rest stood around him. However, there were some better positions closer to the crack which caused many people to fight for them. Chu Xiu said to Lu Fengxian indifferently, "Brother Lu, let's go. We should also go and get a good position." As he spoke, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian also walked towards the crack on the east side. Among the martial artists present, there were body tempering, blood condensation, and xiantian. After a few days of fermentation, the strangeness of Mount Luyang had already spread to the surrounding states and prefectures. There were definitely a lot of xiantian martial artists here, but when they saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian walking over, those ordinary xiantian martial artists took the initiative to make way for them. In other places they might not know Chu Xiu, but in the vicinity of Luyang town, it was impossible for them not to know Chu Xiu. Previously, Chu Xiu had beheaded Zhang Baitao and the other three in front of everyone. This was seen by dozens of people and the details were very clear. It had long been spread by people. Now that some outsiders wanted to come to Mount Luyang to snatch the treasure, they naturally had to inquire about the strength of the martial artists on Mount Luyang and so on. Naturally, Chu Xiu's name would be among them, and he was also listed as one of the dangerous characters. After all, Lu Yuanhai and the other two had a little fame in Linzhong Commandery, but now they all died in the hands of this Chu Xiu. He could fight against 4 people and still kill all of them, so he was definitely not a simple person. Moreover, not only Chu Xiu but also Lu Fengxian, who was next to him, was the same. It was said that this person had also shattered a xiantian martial artist's weapon with one move. It was estimated that he would only need a few moves to kill a martial artist of the same level. When the two of them joined forces, Their power was even enough to challenge a martial artist of the chi-controlling internal aura realm. This group of people naturally did not dare to fight with them for the position. Moreover, even if there were some stronger Xiantian martial artists on Mount Luyang, they had no intention of fighting with the two of them for the position. The treasure hadn't appeared yet, so why bother fighting with two such troublesome opponents? They had not seen the treasure yet and they were already fighting to the death. They would not do such a stupid thing. However, just as Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were getting closer and closer to the crack, Yu Luchuan, who was next in Yedonglu, gave his subordinates a look. Those Xiantian martial artists immediately knew what to do and immediately walked towards Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. In Yu Luchuan's opinion, it was worth it to teach two martial artists with no background a lesson to befriend the young manor master of the morgue. When the others saw that Yu Luchuan had made the first move, they did not move. In fact, they had also wanted to increase their position in Ye Donglio's heart by teaching Chu Xiu a lesson. It was a pity that they did not bring enough people. This group of people were not idiots. That Chu Xiu could kill 4 Xiantian realm martial artists by himself, and they only brought 3 or 4 Xiantian realm martial artists with them. It would be dangerous for them to charge forward rashly. On the other hand, Yu Luchuan's Yu clan of the northern mountains was a big family. The elder of the Yu clan was even a physical invulnerability realm expert. If it were not for his old age, he might have reached the realm of condensing the 3 flowers above his head. The Yu clan had no lack of inner invulnerability realm and Xiantian realm experts. As the eldest son, Yu Luchuan would bring at least 7 or 8 people with him every time he went out. With a look from Yu Luchuan, 7 Xiantian martial artists from the Yu clan immediately walked in front of Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian and said coldly, "Stop." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "What do you mean? Liu Yangshan doesn't belong to your clan. Now that the treasure has yet to appear, you're already sealing off the mountain to intercept it. Do you mean that when the treasure appears, you, the aristocratic families, will eat the meat, but not even a little bit of the soup will be left for us, the individual cultivators?" As soon as these words came out, most of the individual cultivators present looked in their direction with unfriendly gazes. It was normal for the martial artists from the aristocratic families to have an advantage when facing the individual cultivators. After all, they knew each other and were powerful, while the aristocratic families were like a plate of loose sand. But even so, in the past treasure hunts, almost all the good things were taken by the aristocratic families, and the aristocratic families could accept some leftovers. But now, the aristocratic families didn't even leave any leftovers for them. They had already sealed off the mountain before even seeing the treasure. Wasn't this a little too much? The contradictions brought about by social class existed everywhere. Originally, they were already somewhat dissatisfied with these martial artists from the aristocratic families. Now, Chu Xiu's words could be considered to have completely infuriated them. Seeing that Chu Xiu's words had provoked the hostility of the individual cultivators present, the few Yu clan martial artists were so angry that they almost cursed. "We only said 2 words in total. How the hell did you know that we were going to seal off the mountain and leave a way for the individual cultivators to live?" Chapter 75. Seeing that Chu Xiu's words had such an effect, Lu Fengxian, who was standing beside him, was also very surprised. If the human heart was used well, it would be very terrifying. Yu Luchuan saw this scene and quickly walked over. He snorted and said, "Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. I stopped this kid because he didn't know what was good for him. He dared to offend the young master. The young master personally came to recruit you, but you didn't want it. Shouldn't you be taught a lesson?" After he said this, the loose cultivators no longer looked at Yu Luchuan and the others with hostility. They just looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. This person was quite arrogant. He didn't even care about the recruitment of the Memorial Villa's young villa master. Nye Donglu frowned. This Yu Luchuan really didn't know how to speak. What he said made him seem petty. If he wanted to take revenge after failing to recruit him, what kind of person would he be? So Nye Donglu immediately stood up and said, "Everyone has their own aspirations. Brother, you forget it." Yu Luchuan directly waved his hand and said, "Young master, you are magnanimous but I am not. If you don't want to vent your anger, I will." After saying this, Yu Luchuan directly looked at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Kid, I will give you one more chance. Apologize to the young master and I will let you go." Chu Xiu glanced at Nye Donglu. Until now, Nye Donglu still looked like he didn't care and was still pretending to be magnanimous. Chu Xiu also didn't know what he said to Yu Luchuan and the others. Of course, now even if Chu Xiu told the truth in front of everyone, it would be useless. He was just an ordinary loose cultivator, and the other party was the young master of the loyalty village. There was no need to think about who everyone would believe. Moreover, Yu Luchuan and the others did not care about who was right or wrong. They just wanted to use this opportunity to please Nie Donglu. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly held the red sleeve blade in his hand and said faintly, "What if I don't agree?" Yu Luchuan laughed coldly. With a wave of his hand, the 7 Xiantian lords charged towards Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. However, as soon as they made their move, Chu Xiu also made his move. Crimson Drizzle, Azure Dragon goes to sea. With this first strike, Chu Xiu unleashed his strongest power. In an instant, everyone could only see a crimson saber light streaking across the sky. The edge of the saber was condensed with a murderous aura that could pierce through the sun and the moon. It was bright red as if blood was pulsating. The martial artist at the very front revealed a look of horror in his eyes. He had never seen such a fast and terrifying saber strike. By the time he reacted, he could even smell the pungent smell of blood on the edge of the saber. There was a great fear between life and death. He was the Yu clan's right-hand man, but he also did not want to risk his life for the Yu clan. Under this strike, he used all the internal energy in his body to twist his body. He bent his body backwards at a strange angle. Everyone present could even hear the crisp sound of bones breaking. This cultivator's reaction was rather fast. The speed of Chu Xiu's return of the Azure Dragon had already reached an extreme. Ordinary cultivators of the same cultivation realm would either have to take it head-on or be killed. There were not many who could dodge it. However, although he dodged the saber, Chu Xiu's saber did not stop at all. Because the martial artist behind him was not the target of Chu Xiu's saber, he could not react in time. After the person in front of him dodged, his arm was directly chopped off by Chu Xiu's saber. However, before he could start screaming, Chu Xiu had directly approached him. The great sacrificial grappling hand had unknowingly touched the martial artist's head. With a light movement of one hand, the martial artist's head instantly spun a few rounds and flew out. Blood gushed out like a fountain. At this time, Chu Xiu had put away his saber and there was not a single drop of blood on his body. At the same time, there was also a martial artist whose target was Lu Fengxian. Perhaps they thought that Lu Fengxian was just a nobody, so 6 people's target was Chu Xiu, and only one person's target was Lu Fengxian. As a result, that person was even more miserable. Although Lu Fengxian's halberd was only a 3rd-grade ordinary weapon, it was made of fine steel and heavy iron. It weighed more than 500 jin and was almost heavier than an iron hammer. At the instant he rushed towards LV Fengxian, the ancient halberd in LV Fengxian's hand was like a soaring dragon. In an instant, a huge force directly shattered the long sword in the hands of the cultivator. After that, the heavy long halberd was actually shaken by LV Fengxian. It was as if MT Tai was pressing down on him, smashing down with a loud bang, directly blasting the cultivator away. Everyone present could hear the sound of bones cracking. That martial artist was directly blasted more than 10 feet away. His body was distorted beyond recognition. Obviously he would not survive. This series of actions was like the rise and fall of a hair. Almost in an instant on Chu Xiu's side, he had already forced one person to be injured and beheaded in 2 moves. On the other hand, on Lu Fengxian's side, she had also smashed another person to death on the spot. To be able to crush a martial artist of the same level so easily and efficiently, could it be that these 2 people were already close to the realm of Inner Supreme Force? One must know that even some of the weaker Inner Supreme Force martial artists might not be able to kill people as quickly as Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. In the blink of an eye, 2 people were killed and 1 was injured. The remaining 4 people from the Yu clan all stopped there and did not move again. They could see that Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were martial artists with extremely strong explosive power. Although they could not maintain such a terrifying explosive power all the time, there would definitely be times when their strength would be exhausted under the siege. But now it seemed that if they attacked like this, whoever went up would die. The closer they were to the front, the faster they would die. Even though they knew that they would die, they still had to do it. Even with Yu Luchuan's orders, they still hesitated. The other people present looked at each other, a hint of relief in their eyes. Fortunately, they did not rashly send people up earlier. Although it was important to curry favor with Nie Donglu, they also wanted the treasures in Liuyang Mountain. Their subordinates were all killed before the fight started. What else could they use to snatch the treasures? Yu Luchuan's face alternated between red and white. It was not because his subordinates were killed, but because Chu Xiu had humiliated him on the spot. He had just clamored to teach Chu Xiu a lesson to vent Nie Dongliu's anger, but now he was taught a lesson by Chu Xiu. This made the Yu clan look like trash. Yu Luchuan shouted at the warriors, What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear me telling you to attack? The Yu clan warriors hesitated whether to attack or not, but at this time, Nye Donglu stood up and waved his hand. Forget it, brother Yu. The treasures have not appeared yet, don't throw your lives away. Nye Donglu could also see that with Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian's strength, Yu Luchuan's subordinates could not take them down at all. If they forcefully attacked, they would only die in vain. Nye Donglu gave him a way out. Only then did Yu Luchuan look at Chu Xiu with a gloomy gaze. Brat, this matter is definitely not over. The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth curved into a sinister smile. Me too. Nye Donglu looked at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, frowning slightly. He had really underestimated their strength. Just based on their lightning-fast attacks, killing 2 people consecutively, Nye Donglu could be sure that these 2 definitely had the strength of the pinnacle of the innate stage. With such strength at such a young age, it would not be difficult for them to break through the inner and physical invulnerability stage in the near future. It was even possible for them to reach the gathering 3 flowers and condensing 5 Qi realms in the future. At this time, Nye Donglu was also slightly regretful. If it was not for the incident with Zhang Baitao when he came to Luyang Mountain, he was very confident that he could recruit these 2 people at the same time. In the end, because of Zhang Baitao, he became enemies with Chu Xiu, and even Chu Xiu's good friend Lu Fengxian. However, this regret only appeared for a moment before it was extinguished by Nye Donglu. Since they could not be friends, they could only be enemies. On the contrary, the more outstanding Chu Xiu's performance, the stronger Nye Donglu's desire to kill him. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Nye Donglu had just shown generosity to Chu Xiu, so it was not appropriate for Nye Donglu to take action personally. Moreover, with the treasure about to be born, Nye Donglu did not want to waste too much of his strength. Hence, Nye Donglu only said to Chu Xiu in a low voice, Brother Chu, it was just a small conflict and you killed 2 people directly. Isn't this a little too ruthless? Chu Xiu shook off the blood on his blade and said calmly, If I wasn't ruthless, the one lying on the ground now would be me. The Yu clan of the Biling Mountain, the #1 clan in Linzhong Commandery. How mighty and domineering. If I were captured by them, I'm afraid my fate would not be any better than death. Why, the Yu clan suffered a loss. Are you going to fight me personally, young master? I'm more than happy to keep you company. I can experience the strength of a Longhu ranking expert. Chu Xiu stared at Nye Donglu. He was sure that Nye Donglu would not attack him now. It was not that he did not dare to, it was that he would not. Just now, Nye Donglu was still showing off his generosity. Now, in order to kill him, he had shed all pretenses of cordiality and ordered his subordinates to surround and attack him. This would more or less damage his reputation as the young master of the Yijia village. What this person valued the most were his own benefits and his own reputation. Between damaging his reputation and killing Chu Xiu or preserving his strength to seize the treasure, there was no need to say which was more beneficial. Moreover, even if the other party really disregarded his own benefits and attacked him, with the combined strength of Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, it would not be a problem for them to kill their way out without any obstruction from an inner strength realm expert. At worst, Chu Xiu would just give up the treasure in Luyang Mountain, but Nye Donglu would lose even more. Chapter 76. Chu Xiu's guess was right. Nye Donglu did not make a move in the end. He just looked at Chu Xiu and said lightly, Brother Chu, although you and I can't be friends because of a misunderstanding, I don't want you to fall into the devil's path. In the northern Yanjianghu, our Morgue village has always adhered to one principle, that is to punish evil. Brother Chu, I hope you will not forget this. The meaning of Nye Donglu's words was very clear. Although he would not make a move on Chu Xiu now, it was obvious that if Chu Xiu had an excuse to fall into his hands, he would not mind using the power of the Morgue village to punish evil. As for now, it was more important to wait for the treasure in Lying Mountain to come out. After the battle, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian stood around the crack as they wished. It was the best position, at least second to Nye Donglu and the other warriors of the big sections. On the second day, although the crack had widened a little, the people did not see the treasure come out. Instead, they saw a group of unexpected people. More than a dozen martial artists separated the crowd and walked towards the top of the mountain. The one leading them was a handsome young man who always had a proud look on his face. He was wearing a brocade robe and a silver-white fox fur coat, looking incomparably luxurious. Moreover, the clothes of his subordinates were also very thick. They were tall and had rough looks. At first glance, it was obvious that they were not from the eastern Yan region. Seeing this group of people, there was a sudden discussion among the crowd. Chu Xiu also knew who they were. This group of people turned out to be from the Northern Floating Snow City. The Northern Floating Snow City was also a big Northern Yen sect, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. However, the Northern Floating Snow City was located in the northernmost part of the Liaodong region. It was covered with snow all year round and only felt some warmth in the summer. Therefore it was very sparsely populated. Even the Yen Kingdom did not have many troops stationed there. The Driftsnow city of the extreme north was built in such a desolate place, but the body tempered by the extreme cold was also extremely powerful. So in terms of influence, although the Driftsnow city of the extreme north couldn't be compared to the Morale Manor, but in terms of strength, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Driftsnow city of the extreme north could even suppress the Morale Manor. The leader was the eldest son of the Northern Floating Snow City, Blood Spear, Bai Wuji, ranked 18th on the Longhu list. Although Bai Wuji was dressed like a playboy, he had been cultivating in the extremely harsh environment of the Northern Floating Snow City since he was a child. At the age of 13, he carried a steel spear that was even taller than him and a bottle of Jinchuang medicine. He went alone to the mountain forest of Liaodong to cultivate, hunting snow wolves and brown bears. 2 years later, when he reached the blood condensation realm, he returned to the Northern Floating Snow City and took a bunch of bear and wolf skins to make a coat for each of his brothers and sisters. Although Bai Wuji's rank on the Longhu list was much lower than Nye Donglio's, the reason why Nye Donglu was able to rank so high was mainly because of his reputation in the Jianghu and the things he had done. In terms of strength, he might not be able to beat Bai Wuji. At this moment, when Nye Donglu saw Bai Wuji, a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. This time, the news of the treasure appearing on Luyang Mountain was not so big at first, so it did not attract much attention. Most of the people who came to fight for the treasure were the forces around the Linzhong Commandery. The Northern Floating Snow City was so far away from Yendong that it would take more than a month to travel back and forth. Even if they had received the news at the beginning, they should not have come so quickly. Before Bai Wuji's arrival, Nye Donglu and his men were the strongest here, which meant they had a higher chance of winning in the fight for the treasures. But now that there was Bai Wuji, his confidence was not so high. Thinking of this, Nye Donglu walked over and cupped his hands to Bai Wuji. "Brother Bai, why have you come to the Linzhong Commandery? I heard that you have spent most of your time cultivating in the Northern Floating Snow City. When you have nothing to do, you only go hunting and don't come to my memorial hall to drink. This is a bit unreasonable." Bai Wuji still had a lazy look on his face. He casually cupped his hands at Nye Donglu and said, "I was ordered by my father to go to Eastern Qi. I happened to hear that there was a treasure here, so I came to take a look. But brother Nye, you said I didn't come to you, but you are not being honest. Who doesn't know that you are a busy man? Would you have the time to entertain me if I went there? And why do I feel that you are a little unhappy that I am here?" Bai Wuji looked at Nye Donglu from the corner of his eyes. As a young elite of the Northern Yen land, he was old acquaintances with Nye Donglu, but he could not stand Nye Donglio's hypocritical way of doing things. He would beat up whoever he was unhappy with, and if he saw something good, he would snatch it. He was not as hypocritical as Nye Donglu, and his way of doing things was simple and crude. His way of doing things was similar to the style of the Northern Floating Snow City. Among the 7 sects and 8 schools there were good and evil. The Northern Floating Snow City was not considered to be a demonic path, but it was definitely not a righteous path either. Anyway, their overbearing style was criticized by many people in the pugilistic world. Of course, the reason why Bai Wuji was unhappy with Nye Donglu was because of his ranking on the Longhu list. His ranking on the Longhu list was achieved with the silver spear in his hand. What did Nye Donglu rely on? Just scheming. For example, in the battle that made him famous, he annihilated thousands of Black Cloud 18 villages with only 100 people. But in fact, the ones who died were the others. Nye Donglu spent most of his time hiding in the dark, only making a move at the last moment. This was the kind of person Bai Wuji despised the most. The warriors who were originally under Nye Donglu's command looked at Bai Wuji, then at Nye Donglu, but none of them dared to say a word. The Northern Floating Snow City was a big Northern Yen sect. Although it was not in the Eastern Yen land, they did not dare to provoke it. Now that the smell of gunpowder between these two was a little strong, they did not want to get involved. But at this time, Bai Wuji felt that someone was looking at him from Nye Donglio's side. He directly glared at the person, and his originally lazy eyes suddenly flashed with a frightening cold light. "Brat, what are you looking at?" The man who was glared at by Bai Wuji was about to cry. He didn't want to get involved in the matter between Nye Donglu and Bai Wuji. He didn't even say a word. How did he get involved in this? Nye Donglu stood in front of Bai Wuji and said lightly, Brother Bai, don't scare him. Your Bai clan's secret ice soul godly eyes is said to be able to freeze even the primordial spirit. He has just reached the Xiantian realm, how can he withstand it? Bai Wuji sneered and said, starting to protect your subordinates? Don't worry, my ice soul godly eyes is not even at the minor completion level, it can't hurt anyone. Nie Donglu frowned and said, I, Nie Donglu, do not have subordinates with me. These people are my brothers and friends. Bai Wuji waved his hand and said, all right, don't talk to me with such hypocritical words. Get out of my way. This time I am also planning to get involved in the treasure hunt. In recent years this young master's luck has not been very good. I did not expect to encounter the birth of a treasure while I was out doing business. Is this the sign of my luck changing? Of course, Nie Donglu, you are out of luck. Originally you were the strongest here, but now that I am here, you may not be able to compete with me. Ah. Nie Donglu's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light as he said, I have never felt that I am the strongest here. There are still 2 young talents who are rogue cultivators. Their strength is also quite extraordinary. They can kill warriors of the same level as them easily. Even I had to take a step back just now. When the real battle begins, those 2 will also be strong opponents. Now, Brother Bai, one more won't make a difference, and Brother Bai won't make a difference. Bai Wuji followed Nie Donglu's gaze and saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian standing to the side. His eyes also revealed a trace of surprise. Bai Wuji did not understand what was going on. He sneered twice and whispered a few words to a servant beside him. Then he sneered at Nie Donglu and said, it's good to have more people. The more people, the livelier. Otherwise it would be boring if we could snatch the treasure without even fighting. After saying this, Bai Wuji stood to the side. He no longer had any intention of feigning civility with Nie Donglu. After a while, a servant walked out of the crowd and told Bai Wuji everything that had happened in LV Yangshan recently. This immediately made Bai Wuji sneer. Although he did things in a simple manner, it did not mean that he was simple-minded. Now that he had someone ask around, it was indeed as he had expected. Nie Donglu had suffered at the hands of those 2. Then those words he had said just now should be to provoke Bai Wuji to find trouble with those 2. However, Nie Donglu had also spoken half the truth. Those 2 were really strong. They could kill warriors of the same level as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. Normally, Bai Wuji, who was fond of fighting, might be interested in the other party. But now he was more curious about the treasure in Liuyang Mountain. Chapter 77. With the arrival of Bai Wuji, the entire Liuyang Mountain became even livelier. Chu Xiu did not mind. The more people, the better. The more people there were, the better. The more people there were, the more he could win in the chaos. Otherwise, if this place was always dominated by one sect, even if Chu Xiu knew about the treasure in advance, he would not be able to snatch it. 3 days later, the crack on Liuyang Mountain became bigger and bigger. Finally, a beam of emerald light rose directly into the sky. As the mountain trembled, the crack split open completely, and a huge passage big enough for 3 people to walk through appeared. A stone staircase appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed suddenly, but then they all revealed looks of ecstasy. What did the stone staircase represent? It meant that there was an underground palace buried under Liuyang Mountain. It was a relic, and there were even more precious treasures. Not just one or a few, but a whole bunch. Especially for those rogue cultivators following behind. If there were only one or a few precious treasures in this place, the chances of them getting them were almost negligible. But now there was an entire relic below, which meant that they would not return empty-handed. Nie Donglu and the other big sects could eat the meat and they could get the soup. Therefore, the moment the stone staircase appeared, everyone near the crack rushed down first. Chu Xiu did not rush at the front, but followed behind Nie Donglu and the others, not in a hurry. The power of the array had completely dissipated, but it did not mean that it was safe below. It was a good thing that someone was opening the way for them. Everyone walked down the stone staircase. This stone staircase actually led to the underground of Liuyang Mountain. No wonder those who went to excavate before did not find anything. Even after so many years, no one had discovered this relic. It was buried so deep, unless the entire Liuyang Mountain was razed to the ground, it was absolutely impossible to find this relic. When they reached the underground, a giant bronze door appeared in front of everyone. The light of the array was still faintly flickering on it, but at this time it was very weak. Yu Luchuan and the rest looked at each other, then sent a few of their stronger Xiantian lords to try and open the bronze door. However, even with the combined strength of several Xiantian lords, they could only shake the door slightly. This caused the expressions of everyone present to change slightly. The relic was right in front of them, but they couldn't enter it. That would be fun. Bai Wuji sneered, a bunch of trash. Third bro, go help them. As his voice fell, one of Bai Wuji's subordinates stepped forward and rudely pushed the other cultivators to the side. Then he took off his wolf skin robe and circulated his Zhen Qi. With a loud shout, the qi, blood and muscles of his body began to swell. His body seemed to have doubled in size, and his entire body was covered with dense blue veins, making him look like a monster. Chu Xiu turned to Lu Fengxian and said, "Brother Lu, can you beat this person in terms of strength?" LV Fengxian shook her head and said, "This person is also born with divine strength. Moreover, he cultivated a cultivation technique that specialized in tempering the fleshly body in the later stages, which strengthened him even more. Therefore, in terms of strength, I can't beat him. However, this person is a bit unconventional, only tempering his body in strength, ignoring other aspects. Such a person would be a fierce general on the battlefield, but if I want to kill him, it would be a piece of cake." Chu Xiu nodded his head. Although LV Fengxian's attacks were usually incomparably tyrannical, that was only because his opponents were weaker than him in terms of strength. Therefore, LV Fengxian had chosen the simplest method of suppressing his opponents with brute force. If they were to truly fight, LV Fengxian's ancient halberd would be able to bring out both good and bad. But at this time, under the full force of the Northern Drifts Now City's martial artist, the door which several other martial artists failed to open was actually pushed open by him alone. But at the same time as he pushed open the door, a black mist drifted out. This mist actually contained a strong corrosive nature. The Drifts Now City's martial artist couldn't dodge in time and was directly enveloped by the mist. Everyone only heard him let out a few miserable howls before he hurriedly retreated. When everyone was sure that the mist had dissipated and couldn't harm them, they discovered that the northern floating snow city's cultivator was already dead. His flesh and blood had dried up, and the 10-feet-tall giant had turned into a dried corpse. Nie Donglu said in a low voice, "It's corpse qi. Corpse qi that has accumulated for 10,000 years. Originally, this corpse qi wouldn't be so powerful, but after accumulating underground for 10,000 years, this corpse qi contains an extreme death qi. Almost anyone who touches it will die. But now that the door is open and the outside air and life force is flowing in, there shouldn't be any problems. But everyone be careful. Since there is corpse qi inside, it proves that people have died, and a lot of them at that." The several cultivators who had pushed open the door felt a lingering fear in their hearts. If it weren't for this northern floating snow city's cultivator coming out to show off, they would have been the ones to die. Only Bai Wuji's expression was ugly. He hadn't even won the battle yet and a cultivator had already died. This wasn't a good sign. Everyone walked through the door into the ruins. It was incomparably dark inside, with only some faint light coming from outside. But for these Xiantian realm and blood condensation realm cultivators, this wasn't a big deal. At their level, because their blood and qi were strong, their 5 senses were also much more developed. Although their vision at night was slightly worse than in the day, they could still see clearly. After stepping into the ruins, everyone suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. It wasn't because they found a treasure, but because there were too many corpses around. The ruins looked like an underground palace, and the decorations were very luxurious. But at this time, the stone pillars were wrapped in chains and the corpses were chained. There were no obvious wounds and there were signs of continuous struggle. These people were obviously tied up here and starved to death. Everyone's expression darkened. This should be the ruins left behind by a Devil Path sect. The ruins left behind by Devil Path sects were generally acknowledged to be inferior to those left behind by Righteous Path sections. This was because those Devil Path sects were too ruthless, and would arrange many cruel methods in the ruins. Moreover, most of the Devil Path cultivation methods were extremely extreme, and not very suitable for Righteous Path martial artists to cultivate. But it didn't matter. If they obtained these Devil Path treasures and sold them, they believed that many Devil Path sects would be interested in them, and the price would not be low. Chu Xiu followed behind Nie Donglu and the others, looking around. Others thought that this was the ruins of a Devil Path sect, but Chu Xiu knew that they guessed wrong, or rather, it should be said that they guessed wrong by half. This was actually the residence of an ancient Devil Path tyrant, Heaven Devil Lord. This ancient Devil Lord was extremely powerful, and was an existence that surpassed the 5th level of Qi-controlling realm. However, he was a murderous and eccentric person. He clearly had the strength to establish a sect, but he had always been alone. The corpses in this palace were not his disciples but his servants. They should have been buried with him when he died. Chu Xiu made a gesture to Lu Fengxian, telling him to attack together with him. This should be considered safe. This underground palace was the residence of Heaven Devil Lord, so he naturally wouldn't put too many traps in his residence. However, he had set up a formation here, and those with low strength would definitely alarm the formation and be strangled to death. But now that 10,000 years had passed, the formation had completely dissipated, so there was no need to worry. At the end of the underground palace was an extremely lavishly decorated hall. At the top was a bronze throne, and on it sat a skeleton wearing a black robe. It was unknown what the black robe was made of, but even after 10,000 years, it still hadn't decayed. However, the body of the skeleton had already decayed, leaving only pitch-black bones like black crystals. Even after 10,000 years, it still wouldn't decay. In front of the skeleton, there were more than 10 secret boxes placed neatly. Among them, the secret box in the center seemed to be made of some kind of strange metal, emitting a strong golden light. It was unusually dazzling, obviously not an ordinary item. Before everyone could react, Chu Xiu directly made his move, heading straight for the pile of secret boxes. His target was the golden secret box in the center. As Chu Xiu made his move, Lu Fengxian also followed closely behind him. This caused Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji to snort coldly at the same time. With so many people here, how could they let these two rogue cultivators take the lead? Bai Wuji coldly snorted, and directly took out a space box from his robe. From within he took out a 10 feet long silver spear. This silver spear was too big and not convenient to carry around, so most of the time Bai Wuji kept it in the space box. Although the space box was precious for someone of Bai Wuji's status, it was only an ordinary item. It was unknown what kind of metal Bai Wuji's spear was made of, but it actually emitted a deep scarlet light. With the spear in hand he directly attacked Lu Fengxian. At this time, Nie Donglu also made his move. His body was like the wind, and although he moved later, he arrived first. Qi swirled between his hands, and a powerful palm force blasted towards Chu Xiu, accompanied by a faint sound of breaking air. Chapter 78. When he saw Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji attacking him and Lu Fengxian, Chu Xiu's eyes lit up. They had taken the bait. In a chaotic battle, he had to control the rhythm of the battle. He could not give them too much time to think. As Chu Xiu and the other three attacked, the rest of the warriors from the major sects and the non-affiliated warriors also joined in the fight. It was a complete mess. No one knew if there were any other treasures in the underground palace. In any case, there were more than 10 boxes in front of them. These boxes were placed in front of the skeleton. It was obvious that these boxes were the most important things to the skeleton when it was alive. There was no doubt that they were treasures. Moreover, the skeleton itself was like a black crystal. It was obvious that it was a powerhouse who stood at the peak of the Jianghu when it was alive. Just like the glazed Buddha bones left behind by the senior monks of the Buddhist sects, they were immortal for tens of thousands of years. They were all treasures. Moreover, if you took the glazed Buddha bones of the senior monks of the Buddhist sects, people from the Great Light Temple or the Bodhi Zen Monastery might come after you. But if you took the skeleton of a demonic warrior, there would be no need to be so careful. Bai Wuji was already fighting with Lu Fengxian. In fact, the two of them walked the same martial path. Although one used a spear and the other used a halberd, they both had great strength. As they clashed, the clanging sounds of their weapons could be heard. Every time a warrior of the same level was hit, the opponent would be smashed to pieces. However, Lu Fengxian was born with great strength, while Bai Wuji had inherited the techniques of the fluttering snow city in the far north. In this aspect he was much stronger than Lu Fengxian. So in the first exchange there was no clear winner. On the other side, Chu Xiu felt Nie Donglio's palm coming down. He immediately turned around, and in the evening drizzle, a crimson slash appeared. The saber light was beautiful, but it carried a strong murderous intent. Nie Donglu didn't need to use any weapons. His hands were enough to control the universe. As his hands danced, there was a yin and a yang in his palms, as if the universe was changing. It directly affected the momentum of Chu Xiu's saber, causing his saber to deviate. The powerful palm force blasted on the body of Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber. The huge force directly forced Chu Xiu to step back. A grave expression appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. Back then, Wind Sweeping Tower had given Nie Donglu this ranking. Part of the reason why Nie Donglu was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard was because of Chu Xiu's schemes, but it was also because of Nie Donglio's strength. Nie Donglu had probably reached the pinnacle of the innate realm. He was probably one step into the inner invulnerability realm. In terms of strength, Nie Donglu was even stronger than Su Chongyang, who was killed by Chu Xiu. His heaven and earth hands controlled the universe. As long as Chu Xiu's saber momentum was stuck by his opponent, no matter how fast Chu Xiu's saber was, he would not be able to escape from his opponent's grasp. Looking at Chu Xiu opposite him, Nie Dongliu's eyes revealed a hint of murderous intent. Nie Donglu really wanted to recruit a young and powerful independent cultivator like Chu Xiu to be his subordinate. However, since they had already become enemies, it was better to get rid of Chu Xiu as soon as possible so that he could have one less problem. Just now, Nie Donglu did not make a move outside because he was worried about his reputation and the treasures in the ruins. Now that Chu Xiu dared to snatch something from him, Nie Donglu naturally had an excuse and reason to deal with him. Most importantly, Nie Donglu already felt threatened by Chu Xiu. If it were Yu Luchuan and the others, they might be very disdainful of Chu Xiu. Even if Chu Xiu was stronger than them now, they still thought that Chu Xiu was only from the Jianghu and would not amount to much. As he progressed, he would become slower and slower because of the lack of cultivation resources, and they would definitely surpass him. But Nie Donglu did not think that way. His father had once told him to never underestimate any Jianghu ruffians. Any aristocratic family a few generations back was also from the Jianghu ruffians. Nye Renlong could use 30 years to go from a ruffian to the current leader of the Morgue Manor, a famous overlord in the Jianghu. Why couldn't others? If there was one Nye Renlong in the Jianghu, there would be more Nye Renlongs. Nie Donglu remembered his father's words. Now that he had an excuse and opportunity, Nie Donglu immediately attacked Chu Xiu. Every move was filled with killing intent. Chu Xiu was forced to retreat by Nie Donglu. Just as he was nearing the secret boxes, Chu Xiu suddenly did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He sheathed his saber and used the great grappling hand, grabbing at Nie Dongliu's arms. Seeing this, Nie Donglu laughed coldly and said, "The grappling hand you cultivated is indeed exquisite, but in terms of hand skills, how many people in the Jianghu would dare say they are stronger than my father's heaven and earth cloud hand?" Nie Dongliu's arms shook, and his palms contained the power of heaven and earth. While resisting the pull of Chu Xiu's grappling hand, he punched at Chu Xiu's chest, exchanging injuries for lives. Even if Chu Xiu's great grappling hand could cripple Nie Dongliu's arms, Nie Dongliu's palm strike could directly shatter Chu Xiu's heart meridian. Chu Xiu frowned. He wanted to act more realistically, so he did not use his full strength. However, he was forced into a corner by Nie Donglu. In that instant, Chu Xiu retreated, and his saber turned around and slashed at Nie Donglu. Nie Donglu did not retreat at all. His palms turned into a clamp, and he caught the red sleeve saber between his palms. He wanted to snatch it away, but Chu Xiu suddenly exploded with a powerful killing intent and killing intent. A powerful force that could pierce through the sun and moon burst out, making Nie Donglu feel the power of the red sleeve saber explode. Only then did he let go of the red sleeve saber, allowing Chu Xiu to escape again. Looking at the bloodstains on his hands, Nie Dongliu's eyes revealed a gloomy look. Condensing killing intent and killing intent to hurt the enemy, and its power was actually similar to Gang Qi. This martial art was very strange. However, if he had reached the inner Qi realm and cultivated Gang Qi, even if he could not release it, he could still condense it in his hands and easily resist this power. That way, Chu Xiu would not be able to escape so easily. Just as Nie Donglu was about to continue his pursuit, Chu Xiu shouted at Lu Fengxian, "Retreat!" Lu Fengxian, who was fighting with Bai Wuji, was also somewhat suppressed. Hearing this, she immediately retreated, retreating into the chaotic crowd. Nie Dongliu's eyes showed a hint of hesitation. Should he kill Chu Xiu, or take the secret box? The most precious golden secret box was right in front of him, and he had seen Chu Xiu's strength. Although his cultivation level was higher than his opponent's, it would still be very difficult for him to kill him alone. Looking at the few disciples he brought with him, they were also in a chaotic battle. Just as Nie Donglu was hesitating whether he should call them to kill Chu Xiu together, Bai Wuji had already rushed toward the secret box. Seeing this, Nie Donglu did not hesitate any longer. He directly charged at Bai Wuji, and the two instantly began fighting. During this time, the other secret boxes were also divided among the crowd. Some were taken by the disciples of the big sects, and some were taken by the rogue martial artists. Only the most precious golden secret box was left untouched. Previously, there were people who wanted to take it, but they were instantly killed by Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji. Everyone had learned their lesson. The most precious secret box was targeted by the two of them, and it was theirs to take. Whoever touched it would die. At this time on the periphery, Lu Fengxian said to Chu Xiu with some pity, "If it weren't for Bai Wuji, the two of us could have easily defeated Nie Donglu." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't worry, let's go for the other secret boxes. Do you see the cyan secret box in that martial artist's hand? You go for that one and I will go for the secret box in Yu Luchuan's hand. Once we get these two boxes we will immediately escape." Lu Fengxian was stunned. He did not ask why but directly began to snatch it. Since the incident with the Qin family, although Lu Fengxian was betrayed by a friend, he had also made another friend. It was absolutely reliable to cooperate with Chu Xiu. At least at this time Chu Xiu would not cheat him. At this time, Chu Xiu also stared at the secret box in the hand of one of Yu Luchuan's men. Among the people present, only he knew that among the dozen or so secret boxes, the most precious was not the one that Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji were fighting for, but the one that he was going to snatch. The second was the secret box that Chu Xiu had pointed out to Lu Fengxian. From the beginning, Chu Xiu took the initiative to snatch the secret box, in order to disrupt the rhythm of these people so that they would fall into a melee as soon as they came up. Moreover, Chu Xiu's target had always been the golden secret box, which gave people a subconscious illusion that the golden secret box was the most precious in this batch of secret boxes. However, in fact this was indeed the case. This batch of secret boxes was neatly arranged in a row, and the golden secret box was in the center, the one closest to the skeleton. It looked like it was made of the best material, so normally the thing inside would be the most precious. However, in the fierce battle, everyone's nerves were tense, and they forgot that the preciousness of the thing inside the secret box was not determined by them, but by the owner of the secret box. Maybe some things that were considered trash to them were the most precious in the eyes of the secret box's owner, so they would be placed in the strongest and safest secret box. Chapter 79. During the fight for the secret box, Yu Luchuan obtained a secret box. To be precise, it should be his subordinate who obtained a secret box. As the legitimate son of the Yu family of Bailing, Yu Luchuan's strength was not that weak. However, in this kind of chaotic fight he still tried his best to protect himself. Although these rogue cultivators were very respectful to warriors who came from big forces like him and did not dare to touch him, they were now fighting for the secret box. Everyone was fighting. Unless they had the strength like Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji who could easily kill each other, the rogue cultivators would still dare to attack him in this kind of situation. Anyway, the barefooted were not afraid of the barefooted. The Jianghu was so big. As long as they could get the treasure they would really dare to kill people. At worst they could just go somewhere else. The secret box that Yu Luchuan snatched was next to the golden secret box. It should be the second best among this batch of secret boxes. Although two of his subordinates were killed by Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, and one was injured, his subordinate's strength was still the strongest among this group of people. He was feeling proud and ready to let his subordinate hand the secret box to him. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu directly wielded his saber and attacked his subordinate who was holding the secret box. The saber's momentum changed like a fine drizzle. It was extremely powerful and magnificent. Yu Luchuan's subordinates had all seen Chu Xiu's methods. When the warrior saw Chu Xiu coming he subconsciously wanted to block, but Yu Luchuan was so angry that he shouted, "Idiot! Throw the secret box to me." Even a fool could see that Chu Xiu's target was the secret box on him. As long as he threw the secret box to him, the others would attack together to stop Chu Xiu. At this time the warrior was already a little flustered. In the face of Chu Xiu's saber, he hurriedly raised the long saber in his hand to block, but it was directly cut into pieces by Chu Xiu's red-sleeve saber. The warrior from the Yu clan spat out blood and retreated. Chu Xiu's figure crashed into the warrior's chest. He used the great sacrificial grappling hand to pull the warrior's arm off his body. At the same time he also took the secret box from the warrior's chest. "Chase him. Stop him." When Yu Luchuan saw that the secret box that his subordinates had painstakingly obtained was actually taken away by Chu Xiu, he was so angry that he cursed out loud. Unfortunately it was of no use. After obtaining the secret box, Chu Xiu decisively took it and fled the ruins. With the powerful inner qi that he had cultivated through the Xiantian skill, unless the Yu clan's warriors had cultivated a special speed-type movement technique, they would definitely not be able to catch up to Chu Xiu. Almost at the same time, Lu Fengxian also snatched the secret box and followed Chu Xiu to escape from the underground palace. On the other side, Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji deliberately looked at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. They were a little surprised that these two people only snatched two secret boxes and then fled. Weren't they a little too anxious? In fact, the Palace of Heaven Severing Demon Venerable was definitely more reliable than the ruins of those big sections. Those big sects often prepared a lot of secret boxes that had never been used, or put all the messy things in the sects into the secret boxes. This also led to the secret boxes excavated from the ruins of those big sects to be mostly empty or filled with useless things. As for Absolute Heaven Demon Venerable, he was alone. Of course he wouldn't have prepared so many useless things. The secret boxes in front of him were all precious treasures that he had passed down throughout his life. There were also things that he thought were the most precious. Therefore there must be treasures in each of the secret boxes. Among so many warriors present, besides Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were the strongest. With their strength they could have easily snatched more secret boxes. However, they were the first to leave. Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji just glanced at the two of them and then continued to fight. The fight became more intense and white-hot. In the end, the two of them directly hit the secret box and sent it flying. The spirit array on the secret box would be broken as long as it was stained with blood. At this time there were hundreds of warriors fighting here. Not to mention being injured, several of them had died. The ground was also covered with blood. It just so happened that part of the spirit array on the secret box hit the ground and was stained with blood, causing the spirit array to fail. The secret box actually rolled on the ground and opened with a kacha sound, revealing the things inside. This made everyone's eyes widen. They could not believe what they saw. Inside the luxurious secret box that was emitting a golden glow, there was only a silver hairpin and a love poem written on silk. There were so many warriors present and none of them were blind. They could see at a glance that the silver hairpin was just an ordinary silver hairpin. The craftsmanship was also a bit rough. It was not a secret treasure at all. The same was true for the love poem written on the silk cloth. There was nothing special about it at all. The only special thing was that the poem was quite good. It seemed that this demon master Absolute Heaven was a master of both the pen and the sword when he was alive. Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji glanced at each other. At this time, the two of them did not know how to describe their feelings. At this time they remembered that for a powerful rogue cultivator like Demon Master Absolute Heaven, the most important thing could be a secret art or a secret treasure. Naturally, it could also be a part of his past love. However, in the fierce battle they had subconsciously forgotten about this matter. Even now they could not figure out why Demon Master Absolute Heaven, an ancient devil path powerhouse, would still have such a love history that he could not let go of. He even used the most precious secret box to store it. However, since the thing in this golden secret box was not a secret art or a secret treasure, then the two secret boxes that were closest to the golden secret box must contain a secret art or some precious secret treasure. Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji turned their heads to look, but after a moment, they were stunned to find that the two secret boxes were not in the hands of anyone present. At this time they remembered that Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian had taken away these two secret boxes. After a long time, Nie Donglu gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "We were tricked." Before, he was still wondering how Chu Xiu could run away so quickly. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu clearly knew that the secret box they were fighting over had nothing good inside, so he deliberately took the initiative to force Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji to fight over it. Then he would join forces with Lu Fengxian to take away the most precious secret box. However, Nie Donglu was only puzzled as to how Chu Xiu knew that the most precious thing in the secret box left by Demon Master Absolute Heaven was not a secret art or a secret treasure. However, Nie Donglu did not delve into this. Although this kind of thing was not common, it was still possible. Although the world had experienced a great calamity in the ancient times, there were still some books and records that had been passed down, including some of the great figures of the ancient times. Therefore, if Chu Xiu read about the love history of the Absolute Heaven Demon Sovereign from other ancient records, it wouldn't be difficult for him to deduce what was the most important thing to the Absolute Heaven Demon Sovereign. In any case, Nie Donglu had suffered a big loss this time. He had led his people to fight back and forth, but in the end, it was all for nothing. At this time, Bai Wuji, who was next to Nie Donglu, reacted a little slower than Nie Donglu, but obviously he had also figured it out. Looking at the exit of the underground palace, Bai Wuji sneered, "Tisk tisk Nie Donglu, your East Yen is full of outstanding people. This kid has guts, daring to scheme against us." He actually succeeded in snatching food from the tiger's mouth. Nie Donglu glanced at Bai Wuji, snorted coldly and did not reply. If it wasn't for Bai Wuji's impatience to snatch the secret box, not giving him time to think, which led to Chu Xiu escaping, things would not have turned out this way. Seeing the ugly expression on Nie Donglio's face, Bai Wuji suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, I don't feel good about being tricked. But now that I can see you, young Manor Lord Nye, suffer, I guess it's worth it. I still have to go to Eastern Qi, so I won't get involved here. But I believe that young Master Nye, you will definitely not let those two go, right? My northern floating snow city does not have much influence in the East Yen, so I am too lazy to send people to hunt them down. I hope that when I return from Eastern Qi you can finish them off. After saying that, Bai Wuji left with his people. A secret box left behind by an ancient expert was naturally very precious, but this was not the northern floating snow city's territory. Even if he sent people to hunt down Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, not only would it be a waste of energy, but it would also be a waste of effort. So, he decided not to get involved in this matter, he would just watch the show. The other people present were not idiots. Hearing the conversation between Ye Donglu and Bai Wuji, and looking at the silver hairpin in the golden box, they could also guess what was going on. They all secretly thought that Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were indeed very daring to scheme against the young master of the Morgue village and the direct descendant of the northern floating snow city. But thinking about it carefully, this was the inheritance left behind by an ancient demon lord. If it was them, if they had the chance, even if they knew that it would offend the Morgue village and the northern floating snow city, they would still do it. Riches and honor came from danger. For these unaffiliated martial artists with no background, a powerful cultivation technique represented hope for the future. Chapter 80. In fact, there were still many good things in the secret box left behind by the heavenly demon elder. However, the most precious ones had been taken away by Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. The remaining things were not very attractive to Nye Donglu. At this moment, Yu Luchuan was so angry that he cursed at Chu Xiu. He wanted to snatch the secret box back immediately. Only now did he realize that the secret box he had was the most precious one. In the end, it was snatched away by Chu Xiu before he could even warm his hands. Yu Luchuan snorted coldly and said, "It's not over yet. This matter is definitely not over yet." Not only did Chu Xiu offend him, but he also had the most precious secret box left behind by the heavenly demon elder in his hands. This kind of attraction was enough for the Yu clan to send experts to hunt Chu Xiu down. The disciples of the other big clans had the same expression. If the most precious secret box had fallen into Nye Donglio's hands, they would not have dared to snatch it. However, the problem was that the secret box had fallen into Chu Xiu's hands. Hence, they had no qualms about snatching it. Seeing the expressions of the people present, Nye Donglu suddenly said to the crowd, "Everyone fighting for the secret treasures in the ruins has always been based on luck and strength. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were able to obtain it. That is their luck and fortune." Yu Luchuan and the others were stunned when they heard this. What did the young master mean? Was he just going to let Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian take the secret box and leave calmly? One must know that Nye Donglu had such a great reputation in the Jianghu and was even the strongest among the younger generation of the northern Yen land. It was not only because he was good at winning people over, but also because Nye Donglio's methods were also very decisive. Relying on kindness alone would not be able to establish one's position. Dignity must be placed above kindness. Therefore, to be precise, Yu Luchuan and the others not only respected Nye Donglu, but also feared him. Now that Nye Donglu had been tricked by Chu Xiu, they couldn't just let this matter go, right? As expected, Nye Donglu changed the topic and said, "If this relic was left behind by someone else, it would be fine. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian could have taken it away, but it just so happened that this place was left behind by the ancient demonic path expert, Absolute Heaven Demon Venerable. You have also seen the corpses outside. Even if this Absolute Heaven Devil Venerable passed away, he still wanted to drag so many people to the grave with him. Clearly he was a vicious and ruthless devil path tyrant. That Chu Xiu's character is extremely extreme. He had once slaughtered the Zhang family of the Shanyang prefecture because of a small matter. If he were to learn the demonic technique left behind by that heavenly demon lord, I'm afraid that he would become a great scourge of the northern Yen kingdom's martial arts. Thus I've decided that everyone can pursue Chu Xiu on their own. Once you discover his tracks, kill him if you can. Even if you can't kill him, you have to take back his cultivation technique and secret manual and hand it over to my mortuary manor to be sealed. We absolutely can't let this kind of demonic technique appear in the world. At that time, my mortuary manor will reward you handsomely. Also, the memorial village will draw the faces of Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian and send it to the entire Linzhong commandery and even the eastern Yen land. We will do our best to help you search for Chu Xiu." Yu Luchuan and the others were overjoyed when they heard this. As expected of the young master, he was able to deal a fatal blow with just one move. With the reputation of the memorial village in the Yan Kingdom and even in the Jianghu, they believed that as long as someone saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, they would definitely pay attention to their movements, making it impossible for them to hide. This was also a convenient place for them. Most importantly, Nie Donglu said that he would use a lot of money as a thank you gift to exchange for the demonic skill in Chu Xiu's hands. This was what everyone was interested in. Most of them came from righteous sections. After obtaining the demonic path cultivation method, they could secretly cultivate it, but the problem was that the demonic path cultivation method was an extreme and rapid path. If they rashly cultivated it, it was really easy for them to cultivate into a big problem. So now that Nie Donglu wanted it, it didn't matter if the memorial village only wanted to completely seal the skill. As long as they could exchange it for benefits, they would profit. Nie Donglu looked at the people who were gloating in front of him and didn't say anything. Instead, a strange look appeared in his eyes. Actually, with Morgue Manor's current strength, it wasn't that they couldn't send people to chase after Chu Xiu. It was just that Morgue Manor was very busy, and the number of people they could send could be counted on one hand. Although Nie Donglu had a portion of his own power, he was confident that he could chase after Chu Xiu with such power, but it was a little forceful. Therefore it was better to let Yu Luchuan and the other clans make the first move. With the reputation and informants of the Morgue Manor, the other party would definitely be able to intercept Chu Xiu in a short time. When Yu Luchuan and the others completely forced Chu Xiu into a dead end, the memorial village would then make a move. Wouldn't it be better to save time and effort? Using the least amount of effort to achieve the most important thing, this was Nie Donglio's style of doing things. The people below still didn't know that they were being used by Nie Donglu. They had already made up their minds to immediately send experts to kill Chu Xiu when they returned to their families. At this time, after Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian escaped from the underground palace, the two of them left Liuyang town as fast as they could. After taking a breather, Chu Xiu said to Lu Fengxian, "Brother Lu, it's time to run. We'll go in two different directions and escape separately. We'll leave Linzhong Commandery and even the Yan Kingdom." LV Fengxian said in surprise, "It's just two secret boxes snatched from them, there's no need to be like this, right? The most precious box will definitely fall into the hands of Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji. Do they want to get all the boxes at once? That's so overbearing." Chu Xiu raised the box in his hand and said, "The boxes in our hands are the most precious ones." Then Chu Xiu told Lu Fengxian about his plan. However, he only said that he learned about the history of the ruins from an ancient book. After that, Chu Xiu said to Lu Fengxian, "Brother Lu, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure at the beginning, so I didn't tell you. When we entered the underground palace, there were too many people, so it was even more inconvenient to tell you. Fortunately, Brother Lu, you cooperated with me and stalled Bai Wuji. But this time we are snatching food from the tiger's mouth. Nie Donglu and the others will not let this go. You should know the power of the Morgue village. The other side is too famous in the northern Yen. Although they won't mobilize the entire Morgue village to deal with us for a box, as long as they open their mouth, we will become the target of all the forces in the eastern Yen region. So there is no good way. We can only run. You and I will escape separately. This way we can divert some attention." Lu Fengxian was shocked after hearing this, but he didn't blame Chu Xiu. After all, without Chu Xiu he couldn't compete with Bai Wuji and Nie Donglu. So Lu Fengxian directly said, "It's nothing. Anyways, I came out this time to travel the world, so it's the same wherever I go. I heard that the scenery in West Chu is pretty good, so I was prepared to travel there." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Since it's like this, then Brother Lu will leave for now. If we delay any longer and Nie Donglu announces the news in the Morgue village's name, it will be hard for us to leave." Lu Fengxian also nodded. He didn't even look at what was inside the box before leaving. Lu Fengxian's personality was like this. Since he chose to believe Chu Xiu, he didn't think that Chu Xiu would trick him about the box. This was the exact opposite of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a very suspicious person in his bones. In fact, he didn't believe anyone, but Chu Xiu would carefully analyze the other person's personality and way of doing things to see how likely the other person was to be trusted. When Chu Xiu possessed absolute strength, he would casually trust a person. That was because even if the other party wanted to deceive him, he could casually slap them to death. Therefore it was best to have strength. A single person could defeat 10 people. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes were nothing but a sham. Shaking his head, Chu Xiu threw all these random thoughts to the back of his head. He first found a place and opened the box to check his harvest. If the plot hadn't changed, this box actually didn't contain the main cultivation method of Heavenly Demon Sovereign. Because Heavenly Demon Sovereign's cultivation method was too special, it could only be practiced by chance, so he didn't pass it down. However, there was a part of another powerful demonic cultivation method inside. Dripping his blood to open the box, Chu Xiu saw that there were only 3 items inside. One of them was a cultivation jade slip, and the other 2 were 2 books written on an unknown beast's skin. What was strange was that the words on the books were completely blood red. Although Chu Xiu could recognize the words, the handwriting was twisted and very strange. At first glance, Chu Xiu even had the illusion that these cultivation methods were written by a terrifying and strange demon with blood. These 2 cultivation methods had 2 very similar names. One was called Soul Exterminating Heaven and Earth Exterminating Heaven and Earth Exterminating Great Purple Sun Palm. And these 2 cultivation methods were part of the 9 Revolution Demonic Cultivation Method, Yin and Yang Great Sorrow Poem. Chapter 81. The Great Sorrowful Ode of Yin and Yang intersecting between heaven and earth was an extremely evil demonic martial art. It was composed of 7 cultivation techniques. The Great Art of Soul Extinguishing and the Great Violet Yang Hand of Heaven and Earth Extinguishing were 2 of them. It was rumored that on the day this book was completed, a rain of blood fell from the sky, and a strange phenomenon of 100 ghosts crying at night descended. The identity of the person who wrote this book was also a mystery. Some people even suspected that this book was not left behind by a human. Anyway, no matter what, the Yin and Yang sorrowful poem of heaven and earth intersecting was definitely one of the top demonic cultivation methods. As for its ranking of the 9 revolutions, it was actually somewhat uncertain. This was because in the original plot, no one had completely collected this cultivation method, so no one knew how powerful this cultivation method was in the end. It was possible that it had reached the 9 revolutions, but it was also possible that it had reached the level of a paragon-level cultivation technique. In any case, among the few martial arts that appeared in the Jianghu, the lowest was evaluated to be rank 5, while the highest was rank 8. A portion of them had the power of rank 8. It was reasonable for the 7 cultivation methods to fuse into one and reach rank 9. Thus, the Great Compassion Prose of Heaven and Earth intersecting Yin-Yang was evaluated as rank 9. The Heaven Extinguishing Earth Annihilating Great Violet Yang Palm in Chu Xiu's hand was a 5th revolution cultivation technique. It belonged to the weakest of the Yin and Yang Great Sorrow poem. It was a palm technique that condensed the power of the purple Yang Devil Flame in one's hand. When it struck the opponent's body, the purple Yang Devil Flame would enter the body. If it was light, the person would suffer the pain of the Devil Flame burning their heart. When it reached the grand completion stage, this palm could burn the opponent's blood, qi and internal organs into ashes. On the surface, there would only be a purple palm print, but in reality, the person had already been burnt into a piece of human skin. However, the requirements of the Yin and Yang Great Sorrow Fu of Heaven and Earth were too high. Even the lowest level of the Great Purple Yang Hand of Heaven's End and Earth Annihilation required one to be in the inner Supreme Qi realm. The current Chu Xiu could only use a little bit of it and was unable to unleash the power of the Purple Yang Demonic Flame. As for Heaven Extinguishing Earth Extinguishing Soul Shifting Art, it was a mystic art that cultivated mental power and primordial spirit, and was evaluated to be at the 6th rank. However, mental strength was a rather mysterious thing, especially the soul. The great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul shifting required a long time to cultivate. Moreover, it was not very useful in a face-to-face battle. It could be considered as a miraculous technique that required extraordinary skills to achieve victory. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to the cultivation transmission jade slip. Compared to the text-based descriptions of cultivation techniques, the cultivation inheritance jade slip was actually much simpler and faster. In an instant, it could allow a cultivator to understand all the cultivation technique descriptions. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Chu Xiu's expression turned a little strange. This jade slip contained a saber art, the Avicii 3 sabers. In the original plot, this saber technique had appeared. It was a very evil saber technique, a standard demonic martial art. However, even demonic martial artists did not dare to practice it because the backlash was too strong. The Avicii Dao was the most evil bottom of hell. It was also known as the Avicii Hell. If one fell into the Avicii Hell, they would suffer the pain of thousands of reincarnations, never to be freed. This Avicii 3 sabers took the meaning of the Avicii Hell. It was an extremely evil saber produced by the condensation of the world's hatred. It was extremely evil. After practicing it, the cultivator would be controlled by the power produced in the Avicii Hell and become an irrational puppet. Thus, they would completely fall into the Avicii hell and become extremely crazy. They would start to kill innocent people. They would either be destroyed by the righteous martial artists or die from the backlash of the power. Moreover, the level evaluation of this saber technique was also very interesting. It was called the 5th rank, but in fact it could reach the 6th rank or even higher. The reason why the ranking of the Avicii 3 sabers was so low was very simple. For so many years there were many martial artists who practiced the Avicii 3 sabers, but none of them had a good ending. It was simply a suicidal saber technique. Moreover, no one could practice it to the extreme. In the end, the Avicii 3 sabers became notorious. Except for those martial artists who really had a blood feud and wanted to perish together with others, almost no one was willing to practice this saber technique. Even those notorious demonic martial artists were the same. There was even a rumor that this saber technique came from the Avicii hell. It was a cursed saber technique and it was unknown how to practice it. Therefore, over time, no one in the Jianghu practiced this saber technique. No one knew whether it was completely lost or not. Thinking of this saber technique, Chu Xiu was also a little confused. Should he practice it or not? The Avicii 3 sabers was notorious in the future, but its power was also unquestionable. Even if it had so many shortcomings, it could still be ranked as a 5th rank martial art. If he did not practice it, it would be a pity. After thinking about it, Chu Xiu finally decided to practice the Avicii 3 sabers. It was not because Chu Xiu was blinded by his greed for power, but because he had a certain degree of confidence in practicing the Avicii 3 sabers. In the original plot, there were not many people who were very strong who practiced the Avicii 3 sabers. In other words, those who had 8 or 9 rank martial arts would not practice this kind of thing that hurt others and themselves. Therefore, the power of the Avicii 3 sabers, at least on the surface, had the greatest impact on those martial artists who were weak and mentally weak. Chu Xiu thought that his mind was strong enough. Of course, this was only Chu Xiu's confidence. His real confidence came from the glazed golden silk goo and the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting that he had just obtained. The glazed golden silk goo was born from the glazed Buddha bone of the Great Light Temple's eminent monk. It naturally had a kind of calming and focused power that could resist mental demons. This was also one of the uses of the glazed golden silk goo. It could be said that the glazed golden silk goo had a natural restraining effect on the Avicii 3 sabers. Other than the glazed golden silk goo, the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting could also restrain the Avicii 3 sabers to a certain extent. The great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting mainly cultivated one's own mental strength. Moreover, those with strong mental strength would naturally not be easily corroded by the power of the Avicii 3 sabers. With these 2 layers of insurance, Chu Xiu had the confidence to practice this kind of demonic saber that hurt others and himself. However, Chu Xiu was not in a hurry to practice these 2 martial arts. Instead, he chose to leave Linzhong Commandery as soon as possible and hide in Shangmeng Mountain. Linzhong Commandery did not have many barren mountains and dense forests, so it was impossible to hide for a long time. As long as the Morgue Manor issued a warrant for Chu Xiu could guarantee that there would be no place for him in Linzhong Commandery. Therefore, Chu Xiu had to hide in Shangmeng Mountain as soon as possible. The entire Shangmeng Mountain was larger than Wei Commandery. Even if Nie Dongliu's father, Nie Renlong, threw everyone from the Morgue Manor into Shangmeng Mountain, it would only be a drop in the ocean, not to mention Nie Donglu looking for him. However, what Chu Xiu did not expect was that Nie Dongliu's speed was much faster than his. Nie Donglu did not return to the Morgue Manor to issue an order. Instead, he used his reputation to mobilize the entire Linzhong Commandery to hunt down Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. Of course, the main target was still Chu Xiu. He attracted more hatred than Lu Fengxian. After noticing that something was wrong, Chu Xiu immediately changed his obvious black warrior suit into green coarse hemp clothes, wore a wide bamboo hat and blackened his face. He put the red sleeve blade into a secret space box and replaced it with a long sword. Only then did he begin to carefully flee towards Shangmeng Mountain. Chu Xiu did not practice disguise. This was the safest method he could think of. Otherwise, if he covered himself up in broad daylight, it would only attract more attention. Now, Chu Xiu was almost the same as the lowest level of Jianghu. As long as it was not someone close to him, they would not be able to recognize him. 7 days later, in a small town outside of Shanyang Prefecture, Chu Xiu sat in a corner of a tavern. There was some food in front of him. He ate at a leisurely pace, not showing any sense of urgency at all. In these 7 days, the forces of the Linzhong Commandery were fast in their pursuit, but Chu Xiu was not slow in hiding either. Actually, if it was just the local forces of the Linzhong Commandery, it would be easier. After all, the real elites of the morgue had not made a move. Nie Donglu only wanted to kill with one strike, and did not want to waste time looking for people. However, the troublesome thing was that the local forces of the Linzhong Commandery had actually asked the anemophilia of Wind Sweeping Building to investigate his whereabouts. Professionals were professionals after all. Chu Xiu didn't know what method they had used to lock onto his position. In any case, Chu Xiu could always see cultivators from the major factions of the Linzhong Commandery wandering around him these past few days. Fortunately, they didn't discover him. After going around in circles, Chu Xiu returned to Shanyang Prefecture. However, this was the last stop. After eating, Chu Xiu only needed to walk for a few more days before he could enter Shangmeng Mountain. In fact, Chu Xiu did not want to rest here at first. However, he had used up all his food and was now running for his life. There were warriors of the Linzhong Commandery all around him. Chu Xiu had to maintain his physical and mental strength at its peak. Otherwise, if he was really discovered, Chu Xiu would not even have the strength to fight back. Chapter 82. In the tavern, there were a lot of merchants and some wandering martial artists eating and resting here. It was raining heavily outside, so they were too lazy to continue their journey. At this moment, the door of the tavern was pushed open and more than a dozen martial artists walked in. The one at the front was very young and dressed like a young master of an aristocratic family. This man was Shanyang Prefecture's Tao family's eldest young master, Tao Yi. Next to him was a 40-years-old steward who frowned and said, "Eldest young master, we will arrive at Shanyang Prefecture in a day. Let's go back and rest. The herbs we bought from Wei County can't be exposed to the rain." Tao Yi looked impatient and said, "Nonsense anyway, we have been in the rain for several days, one more day won't make much of a difference. From Wei County to Shanyang Prefecture, how many days has it been since we ate a hot meal? Anyway, this young master can't stand it. Father, you really want to go to Wei County to buy herbs in this season? You can just buy them directly from Qingyuan Town. Why do you have to go to Wei County? How much money can you save?" The tavern wasn't big, and now with so many people pouring in, it immediately felt crowded, even to the point that it couldn't sit down. Tao Yi frowned and shouted at the cultivators on Chu Xiu's side, "All of you, get out of my way and scram." Tao Yi's overbearing behavior caused the other Jianghu people to reveal a hint of anger in their eyes. Immediately, someone was about to flare up, but he was immediately pressed down by someone else. Someone whispered a few words into his ear and pointed out Tao Yi's identity. Only then did those Jianghu people give up and obediently prepared to leave. They couldn't afford to offend the Tao family's young master. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes, but he didn't say anything. He hurriedly ate 2 mouthfuls of food and prepared to leave. He didn't need to care about a small character that he could easily pinch to death. If his whereabouts were exposed because of teaching him a lesson, it wouldn't be worth it. But at this time, Tao Yi saw that Chu Xiu's movements were a little slow. He was already a little impatient, so he suddenly snorted and directly walked over, slapped Chu Xiu's bamboo hat and reprimanded, "Didn't you hear me telling you to get out? Dilly-dallying, do you want this young master to invite you out?" The moment the bamboo hat was thrown away, Tao Yi saw Chu Xiu's dark face. He didn't care at first, but at this time he seemed to suddenly think of something, and his eyes suddenly showed a touch of panic. Although he forced himself to calm down, his cheeks couldn't help but twitch. Tao Yi turned around calmly and glanced at the food on the table. He snorted disdainfully and said, "Really, this small place can't even cook well. What are these things? Pig food? Forget it, I'm not eating anymore. I'll go back to Shanyang Prefecture." The manager of the caravan was dumbfounded. He didn't know what this young master was up to. "Just now, you were the one who said that you hadn't eaten a hot meal for a few days, and now you're complaining that the food is bad. It seems like the young master's temper is getting worse every year." However, at this moment, no one noticed the uncontrollable fear on Tao Yi's face. He knew Chu Xiu. Although he hadn't spoken to Chu Xiu, he had seen Chu Xiu a few times at the Shanyang Prefecture auction. Originally, he didn't have a deep impression of him, but as Chu Xiu did these things, his impression of Chu Xiu became extremely deep. Not to mention the destruction of the Zhang family, others couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the death of Zhang Baitao and the other 3. Even if they heard it, they wouldn't say anything. But the forces of Shanyang Prefecture were very concerned. They didn't expect that Zhang Baitao, who came from the Ba Mountain Sword sect, would still fail to kill Chu Xiu with 3 Khanate experts and lose miserably. And as Tao Yi brought the caravan back from Wei Prefecture to the Yen Kingdom, The news about Chu Xiu had spread throughout Linzhong Prefecture. In the fight for the secret box in the Liuyang Mountain relic, he had schemed against the young master of the Morgue village Nie Donglu, and by Wuji the two Jianghu elites of the fluttering snow city, in front of everyone. His courage was boundless and he had no scruples. From that moment on, Tao Yi was certain that this person was a fanatic who had no scruples at all. For the sake of profit he would do anything. But his state was too high. His opponents were the big clans of Linzhong Prefecture, and even the famous sects like the Morgue village and the fluttering snow city in the northern Yen. They had nothing to do with the Tao family, a small family that could only show off in Shanyang Prefecture. But Tao Yi had never thought that he would meet Chu Xiu here. He knew what kind of situation Chu Xiu was in now. He was wanted by the Morgue village and was being hunted by all the martial arts masters in Linzhong Prefecture. If he sold his information he could get a lot of money. But the problem was Tao Yi did not dare to do it now. At the moment Tao Yi only hoped that Chu Xiu did not notice anything wrong with him. Everything had to wait until he left this place. But unfortunately things did not go according to his wishes. Just as Tao Yi was about to leave, Chu Xiu said faintly, "Young Master Tao, are you going to leave just like that?" Tao Yi's frightened eyes could not hide from Chu Xiu. Although he pretended to be calm on the surface, Chu Xiu could still hear the sound of his heart beating when he was nervous. Tao Yi turned his head and pretended to be calm. "What do you mean? Do you know me?" Chu Xiu did not speak. He just slowly took out his red sleeve knife from the secret box. The moment he saw the red sleeve knife, Tao Yi suddenly panicked. He hurriedly shouted, "Chu Xiu, my Tao family has no grievances with you. Even if I know your information I will not say it. If you let me go, I promise not to leak your information." Hearing that the person in front of them was Chu Xiu, who was wanted by the Morgue village, the Tao family stewards were suddenly shocked. But then they secretly thought that it was not good. It was okay if Tao Yi did not speak before. Now he said it in public. This was simply forcing Chu Xiu to kill him. Sure enough, the moment Tao Yi shouted those words, a crimson saber light had already appeared in front of him. "No!" Tao Yi roared angrily. He didn't want to die here. He didn't want to carelessly lose his life here because he had slapped Chu Xiu's bamboo hat away. He still had the hidden weapon of Qinji sect given to him by his father. It was used to save his life in critical moments. It was said that if used well it could even hurt a Xiantian warrior. But as soon as he put his hand in his pocket, Chu Xiu's knife had already arrived. The crimson knife light flashed and scarlet blood splashed. Tao Yi's eyes were still flickering with unwillingness as his head fell to the ground. He was the only legitimate son of the Tao family. Such a great family business was still waiting for him to inherit. But he died here today. The cause of his death was extremely funny. He was 23 years old and died because of his dirty hands. If he had not hit Chu Xiu's bamboo hat and seen something he should not have seen, he would not have died here. When the steward of the Tao family's caravan saw this scene, he immediately screamed in horror. More than a dozen members of the caravan began to flee frantically. The rest of the people in the tavern, except for a few ordinary people who really did not know martial arts, even smashed the walls and ran away screaming. Recently, Chu Xiu's reputation in Linzhong Commandery was very big. It should be said that those who could be wanted by the righteous manner and chased by the whole Jianghu forces in Linzhong Commandery were all famous. Not only did LV Yangshan plot against Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji, but other things that Chu Xiu had done in Linzhong Commandery were also dug out. Zhang family of Shanyang Prefecture, Zhang Baitao and the other three people, and Cold River Prefecture also had his traces. After all, there was a fish from the Black Tiger gang who had escaped the net in Cold River Prefecture. Although they had been scared out of their wits, they still spread the news about Chu Xiu. In this way, the number of Xiantian warriors who had died in the hands of Chu Xiu had already exceeded 10. Fierce man. Absolutely fierce man. Hearing the screams around him, Chu Xiu did not chase after them. He could not catch up anyway. Dozens of people fled in all directions. Even if dozens of pigs ran like this, Chu Xiu would not be able to kill them all in a short time. He just looked around and sighed. He was only one step away, but in the end he was forced to kill. At this moment, a stern shout came from outside, "Chu Xiu! Stop hiding and come out to die." Outside the ruined tavern, 4 inner strong realm warriors surrounded Chu Xiu in the center. Their eyes revealed a glint of dense killing intent. They had been searching in the vicinity before. Now that they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. Seeing Chu Xiu, the 4 inner supreme realm martial artists sighed inwardly. The young manor master's predictions were like that of a god. Chu Xiu was indeed in this place. Originally, the major forces of Linzhong Commandery had spread out to search. Among them they had found traces of Lu Fengxian, but Lu Fengxian had escaped. Chu Xiu was even better at hiding. Even with the intervention of wind-sweeping building, they had not been able to dig out Chu Xiu. Later, it was Nie Donglu who personally made the decision to ignore other places and only focus on the area near Wei Commandery. The reason was simple. Since Lu Fengxian had escaped to West Chu, Chu Xiu could only choose to escape to Wei Commandery or the extreme north of Liaodong. The latter was the territory of the extreme north's floating snow city. If Chu Xiu escaped there, they could not do anything about it. Naturally, the extreme north's floating snow city would take care of him. Therefore, the area near Wei Commandery was the place where they strictly searched and sent most of the inner Strong Realm warriors here. They did not expect that Chu Xiu would really appear here. Chapter 83. 4 Internal Strong Realm Martial Artists Besieging an Innate Realm Martial Artist. Not to mention watching it, even hearing it sounded like bullying. In fact, it was Chu Xiu's bad luck. Most of the people who participated in the search were below the Internal Strong Realm. Because it was raining outside, these 4 Internal Strong Realm Martial Artists were too lazy to search in the heavy rain. They gathered together and prepared to find a place to take shelter from the rain. Anyway, as long as they found Chu Xiu, the other martial artists would naturally make noise and send them a message. Therefore, as soon as there was movement here, 4 Internal Strong Realm martial artists were immediately attracted. One of the 4 sneered and said, "Everyone, let's not talk about who gets the secret box from Chu Xiu first. But his life will be taken by the Yu clan of the Bailing." The other 3 nodded indifferently. Anyway, to them, Chu Xiu's life did not matter. They were mainly here for the secret box. It seemed that they had also heard that Chu Xiu had offended the Yu clan of the Bailing during the treasure hunt in Liang Mountain. 3 innate rankers had been killed by Chu Xiu, and 1 had been seriously injured. Moreover, the secret box in Chu Xiu's hands had been snatched from the Yu clan of the Northern Mountain. It was normal for the Yu clan to want Chu Xiu's life to regain some face. Just as the 4 people did not take Chu Xiu seriously and were still discussing how to kill Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and the crimson saber light was already slashing towards the internal strong realm martial artist from the Yu clan of the Bailing. This was a strike that Chu Xiu had condensed all his strength and exerted to the extreme. Azure Dragon goes to sea, crimson rain falls. The Yu clan's internal strong realm martial artist was still cupping his hands towards the other 3, thanking them for giving him face. But in the blink of an eye, Chu Xiu's saber had already arrived in front of him. The bright red saber light was like a blood-soaked green dragon lurking under the surface of the sea. When it was not attacking, it hid in the depths of the 9 nether abyss, but when it attacked, it broke through the sea and soared into the 9 heavens. In particular, Chu Xiu had condensed the killing intent of the piercing the sun and moon technique onto the blade. The power contained in the blade was even more frightening. The inner strong realm martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing felt his heart skip a beat. He subconsciously retreated, and a green light erupted from the long sword in his hand. 9 sword flowers bloomed in front of him. Although a martial artist in the inner force realm couldn't release his gang qi, it wasn't a problem for him to condense it in his hands or weapons. However, when the saber and the sword collided, the power of Chu Xiu's saber suddenly exploded. The power of piercing the sun and moon immediately shattered the gang qi, and the inner gang realm martial artist's long sword actually shattered. In his shock, the inner force realm martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing subconsciously gave way. Chu Xiu didn't continue fighting, and took the opportunity to run directly towards the dense forest on the other side of the path. The other 3 people were just about to attack, but they didn't expect that the Yu clan of Bailing would only block 1 move before giving way. The 3 people complained, "Old Yu, what the hell are you doing? You can even retreat when an inner force realm martial artist is facing an innate realm martial artist. Does your Yu clan not want to take revenge?" The Yu clan martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing said angrily, "What do you know? There's something strange about Chu Xiu. The strength of that saber strike just now was extremely shocking. Moreover, he had a secret technique that allowed him to burst forth with a might comparable to gang qi in the Xiantian realm. If I hadn't retreated just now, that saber strike would have injured me. Think about it, if Chu Xiu was really a simple person, how could he defeat the young master and the people from the northern fluttering snow city on Liang Mountain? Stop talking nonsense. Go after him." The 3 people couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with the Yu clan of Bailing. They immediately chased after Chu Xiu. At this moment, Chu Xiu had to thank the rain. An inner force realm martial artist had sharp senses, but it was raining heavily outside. It would more or less affect the four people's senses and cover up Chu Xiu's tracks. This also caused the four people to be unable to catch up with Chu Xiu for a while in the dense forest. The four people looked at each other and sneered. They immediately spread out and began to search around the dense forest towards the center. Although Linzhong Commandery was called Linzhong Commandery, it referred to the time when the northern Yan Kingdom had just been established. This place was mostly barren mountains and dense forests, and was rarely visited by humans. However, there were not many large forests in Linzhong Commandery at this time. With the four people working together to search, they would be able to force Chu Xiu out sooner or later. At this moment, in the dense forest, Chu Xiu's expression was incomparably cold. There was no panic, only calmness. A strong murderous aura surrounded him. The aura was a little vague, but Chu Xiu could feel that the other party was probably trying to surround him. It was not that Chu Xiu had not killed an inner force realm martial artist before. Although it was extremely difficult for Chu Xiu to kill Su Chongyang, after killing Su Chongyang, Chu Xiu had also gained a lot of experience in dealing with inner force realm martial artists. He had also refined the purple dogwood and his strength had improved greatly. In Chu Xiu's opinion, any one of these four inner force realm martial artists was actually not as good as Su Chongyang. After all, Su Chongyang was from the Giant Spirit Gang. The competition between him and the martial artists of the six gangs was fierce. Su Chongyang's strength was definitely stronger than these martial artists from ordinary families. And most importantly, the Giant Spirit Gang's 72 Paths Giant Spirit Martial Arts was a collection of the Giant Spirit Gang's several generations of powerhouses. It was inclusive and exceptionally powerful. In terms of martial arts, Su Chongyang also had the advantage. Back then Chu Xiu could kill Su Chongyang. Now, it would not be difficult to kill them one-on-one. However, the problem was that the four of them joined forces. Chu Xiu could only run for his life. He had to find a way to defeat them one by one. Feeling that one of the murderous auras was getting closer, Chu Xiu deliberately left more marks on the ground for the martial artist to catch up. After being washed away by the heavy rain, the marks would be immediately washed away after being seen by one person. After going back and forth like this, one of them had already pulled away from the other three. Chu Xiu stopped and retreated a long way back. He hid in a tree. A moment later, a martial artist chased after him. It was the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing. The marks left behind by him retreating were actually different from those left behind by normal walking. However, because of the heavy rain, all the marks had become fainter. The martial artist did not react and continued to follow the marks quickly. Just as he passed by the tree where Chu Xiu was hiding, Chu Xiu suddenly exploded. The aura on his body exploded and the red sleeve saber slashed down. The surrounding heavy rain was completely cut apart by the power of the saber. The murderous aura tore through the curtain of rain and slashed towards the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing. This sudden saber and the sudden burst of murderous aura made the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing feel alarmed. However, Chu Xiu's saber was too vicious and swift. When he turned around, Chu Xiu's saber had already reached him. In a hurry, the Yu family's inner strength realm martial artist struck out with his palm. Green vigor chi appeared on his palm. He wanted to slap Chu Xiu's saber off course, but unfortunately it was too late. His weapon was a sword. When he was in the Yu family, he mainly practiced sword techniques. His martial arts could only be said to be sloppy and ordinary. He could not be compared to Su Chongyang at all. In the past, Su Chongyang could almost slap Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber out of his hand with his bare hands. Now, when the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing's palm landed, it was directly negated by the murderous aura. Instead, it stabbed his left palm and made it bleed. The crimson saber light slashed down. Even though the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing tried his best to dodge, he was still hit by the saber light. He immediately grunted and one of his arms flew to the side. Blood splattered everywhere. Having one of his arms chopped off, the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing became even more ferocious. He used the fingers of his right hand as a sword and displayed the Yu family's secret mountain calming sword technique. Although the force of his fingers was small, it was majestic. It landed on Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber and let out a loud clang, causing Chu Xiu's figure to retreat. At this moment, Chu Xiu took advantage of this opportunity to sheath his saber and displayed the great grappling hand. As his arms entangled, no matter how majestic his opponent's mountain calming sword technique was, he could not break free from Chu Xiu's grasp with only one arm. Chu Xiu directly tore off his right arm. For a martial artist, having both arms crippled was basically no different from death. However, it must be said that the vitality of a martial artist in the inner strength realm was very tenacious. Even without both arms, the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing channeled his inner force into his legs and kicked at Chu Xiu. He was not trying to fight with his life on the line. He just wanted to live. In his current state there was no way he could escape. He could only hold on to Chu Xiu until the other three arrived. At that time he could live, but Chu Xiu had to die. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu immediately frowned. Unable to kill him in one blow, it was troublesome to deal with a martial artist in the inner strength realm. Of course, it was only slightly troublesome. The martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing had not learned any leg techniques. It was impossible for him to simply hold on to Chu Xiu. After a few moves, he was stabbed in the chest by Chu Xiu's saber. Just as he was about to breathe his last, three figures quickly rushed towards him. He could only close his eyes with a hint of unwillingness. He was still one step too late. Chapter 84. The warrior from the Yu family of Bailing who was killed by Chu Xiu sighed that he was a step too slow. In fact, Chu Xiu was also sighing that he was a step too slow. He did not expect this internal strength realm warrior to be so difficult to deal with. Of course, the ones who were the most shocked at this moment were the three people who were chasing after Chu Xiu. Looking at the two broken arms on the ground and the warrior from the Yu family of Bailing hanging from Chu Xiu's blade, the three of them could not help but feel a storm in their hearts. How long had it been? It was at most the time it took to brew a cup of tea. In the end, the warrior from the Yu clan of the northern mountain was killed by Chu Xiu. The three of them had to re-evaluate Chu Xiu's strength. He was so strong that he did not seem like a warrior of the innate realm. After seeing this scene, the three of them no longer dared to look down on Chu Xiu like before. They surrounded Chu Xiu with a serious look in their eyes. It was not rare for an innate realm warrior to kill an internal strength expert. For example, Nye Donglu, the young master of the morgue, and Bai Wuji, who looked like a playboy but was actually called a lunatic by the people of the northern fluttering snow city, all had such strength. But now, Chu Xiu, a rogue cultivator who was born in the wilderness, had actually displayed such strength. This was a little too much. If they could not kill him today, endless troubles would be waiting for them. The three of them exchanged glances. Without saying a word, they began to attack Chu Xiu in a frenzy. In that instant, Chu Xiu felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. He could rely on his strong explosive force to fight against an internal strength realm warrior, but no matter how strong his explosive force was, he could not kill all three of them. After only a few moves, Chu Xiu was beaten back by the three of them, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Although it was not glorious for three internal strength realm warriors to besiege an innate realm warrior, it was still effective. At least for the current Chu Xiu, he had been forced into a dead end. Holding the red sleeve blade, Chu Xiu wondered if there was any other way out and if he should use his trump card. Chu Xiu's trump card was very simple. It was the 3 blades of Avicii. For the past few days, Chu Xiu had been running for his life and had not started to practice the cultivation method that he had obtained from the secret box. However, because the 3 blades of Avicii had been imprinted into Chu Xiu's mind through the technique transmission jade slip, Chu Xiu was constantly visualizing the power of this blade in his mind even when he was fleeing for his life. It could be said that if Chu Xiu really made a move now, he was confident that he could make the first blade. However, as for the power of this blade and whether Chu Xiu could control this power, even Chu Xiu himself could not be sure without going through detailed deliberation and experiments. Just as Chu Xiu clenched the red sleeve blade in his hand and was ready to fight for the last time, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The other 3 martial artists who were chasing him also felt the same. They were closing in on Chu Xiu, and their movements also stopped. Raindrops fell from the sky, but unknowingly, the surroundings began to become silent. Whether it was the sound of raindrops falling to the ground or the sound of the breeze blowing through the forest, they all strangely disappeared. Amidst the hazy drizzle, a man walked out of the rain mist. His figure seemed to have blended into the world. When the raindrops were about to fall on him, they strangely deviated from their original positions and slid to the surroundings. It was very strange but also very harmonious, as if he was supposed to be like this. When that person came closer, everyone present could clearly see the other person's attire. It was very strange. The person who walked over was wearing a pair of gold-rimmed boots and a black tight-fitting warrior suit. On his head was a very strange black conical hat. The iron conical hat was inlaid with an abstract golden dragon pattern as a decoration. The most peculiar thing was that he wore a black iron mask on his face. The style of the mask was very simple, only revealing the eyes. There was no facial expression at all. At first glance, it looked very ordinary, but at a closer look, it gave people a kind of creepy feeling. Moreover, it wasn't a bare mask. On the mask, there was a star diagram of the Star of Sin, one of the 36 celestial Dipper star diagrams. The moment they saw this person, the three people who were chasing after Chu Xiu immediately trembled. They tremblingly spat out three words: Blue Dragon Society. The person faintly said in a hoarse voice, E Mountains Lu family, Chen Ling's Chao family, Ling State's Yen family. What a coincidence, your three families are all gathered together. Since you know who I am, then you should know what I'm here for. Your three families have forced someone into a corner. Someone has taken out a secret treasure to buy the lives of your three families. Since you all happen to be here today, then hand over your lives. The three people's eyes revealed a trace of fear. Without saying anything, they directly split into three directions and turned to flee. The mysterious person's figure didn't move. He took a step forward, and the drizzle in front of him actually connected into a line, condensing into a thin sword. As he waved his hands, the invisible raindrops condensed together and turned into a powerful sword chi that tore through the void. With a loud bang, it directly blasted a fist-sized hole in the chest of a warrior. At this time, he directly grabbed at the warrior on the other side with one hand. Powerful gang chi condensed in his hand, and the surrounding raindrops dodged to the side, forming a hole. As he clenched his fist, there was a loud bang, and the warrior was forcibly crushed in midair by him. The corpse was blown up into minced meat by the gang chi. The last warrior ran a little further away. The mysterious person only took a light step forward, but it was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch. He directly crossed a distance of more than 100 feet. He gently placed a hand on the warrior's neck, and the head was already in his hand. The corpse actually ran more than a dozen steps forward before falling to the ground. Crushing. It was an absolute crushing. Chu Xiu couldn't see the strength of the other party, but his strength was definitely several realms higher than those three. To be able to injure people with gang chi from more than 100 feet away, the other party was 100% an existence that surpassed the physical invulnerability realm. He might even have reached the realm of 3 flowers at once prominence or 5 chis in the origin, or even a great master in the realm of oneness of heaven and man. Of course, the strength of the other party was no longer important. What was important was the identity of the other party. Just now, the three people had already revealed the identity of the other party. Chu Xiu could also recognize the other party's clothing. If there was no accident, this person should be one of the 4 spirits of the 4 spirits fusion. He was a member of the largest assassin organization in Jianghu, the Blue Dragon Society. The Blue Dragon Society, the White Tiger Hall, the Vermilion Bird Pavilion, and the Black Tortoise Sect. These 4 sects were known as the 4 spirits fusion. Its roots could be traced back to the top sect of the ancient times, the 4 Symbols Divine Sect. These 4 sects could be said to be the inheritors of the 4 Symbols Divine Sect. However, due to various reasons, they eventually split up and developed on their own. The strangest thing was that each of them developed into a top force in Jianghu. Therefore, they were also known as the 4 Spirits Fusion. Among them, the Blue Dragon Society was a powerful assassin organization that could be found throughout the entire Jianghu. The killer from the Blue Dragon Society threw away the head in his hand and took a step forward. He arrived in front of Chu Xiu and looked at Chu Xiu with interest. Chu Xiu also looked at the other party. There was no hostility in his eyes. In fact, for an expert like this who could kill him with one move, hostility was the last thing he needed. After a while, the expert from the Blue Dragon Society suddenly said, Chu Xiu, I've heard of you. Chu Xiu nodded and said, in the entire Linzhong Commandery, there are probably only a few people who haven't heard of my name. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, the interest in the eyes of the expert from the Blue Dragon Society became even stronger. Interesting. In the past few years, there weren't many people who could make Nie Donglu suffer a loss. There weren't many who could kill an inner invulnerability expert at the innate realm. Are you interested in joining the Blue Dragon Society? The things you snatched from Nie Donglu are treasures to others, but the Blue Dragon Society doesn't care. Join the Blue Dragon Society and your life will be guaranteed by the Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu pointed at the corpses of the 3 martial artists on the ground and said indifferently, if I say no, I'll probably end up like the 3 of them. The expert from the Blue Dragon Society shook his head and said, that won't happen. The Blue Dragon Society has rules. When no one pays us, we don't like to kill innocent people. Similarly, the Blue Dragon Society will only protect our own people. I'm a very reasonable person. If I didn't appear just now, you would have been killed or captured by those three. Now, there are many people out there looking for your whereabouts. If you aren't a member of the Blue Dragon Society, why would I protect you? I'll bring 3 more Inner Invulnerability Realm martial artists in front of you, then leave and return to your previous state. That's reasonable, isn't it? Chu Xiu didn't say that he had a trump card to break out of this situation. He only smiled bitterly and said, "That's no different from courting death. However, I just want to ask, why did Senior suddenly ask me to join the Blue Dragon Society on a whim? Or is it because the Blue Dragon Society is so simple in recruiting assassins nowadays?" The expert from the Blue Dragon Society stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "I didn't ask you to join the Blue Dragon Society on a whim. It's because my Blue Dragon Society, to be more precise, my branch is lacking people. It's so lacking that I, the branch leader, have to personally deal with 3 small fries. Therefore, whenever I see someone I feel is suitable, I'll try to recruit them. As for the conditions for the Blue Dragon Society to recruit assassins, there aren't many. I'm the branch leader, so naturally I have the final say." Chapter 85. In the face of the Blue Dragon Society's recruitment, Chu Xiu didn't refuse. He didn't have the qualifications to refuse. However, when he heard that the other party was a branch leader, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Seeing the surprise in Chu Xiu's eyes, the Blue Dragon Society expert pointed at the black iron mask on his face and said calmly, "Blue Dragon Society's Big Dipper 36 divisions. I'm the branch leader of this Heavenly Sin branch. What's so strange about that?" Chu Xiu shook his head. Right now there was nothing strange about it. However, he remembered something about this branch leader. If the Heavenly Sin branch didn't have a new branch leader, then this person in front of him would stir up quite a storm in the entire northern Yen land. Now that Chu Xiu couldn't escape from the Linzhong commandery, he had no choice but to agree to this person's request. He could only wait to be hunted down. However, Chu Xiu needed time to recuperate. Joining the Blue Dragon Society was a good choice. As for whether it was a good choice or a bad one, Chu Xiu wasn't sure. Most importantly, Chu Xiu knew that this Blue Dragon Society's Heavenly Sin branch leader would stir up quite a storm in the northern Yen land in the future. If Chu Xiu followed this person, he might be able to get a share of the pie. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "But what if I leak the Blue Dragon Society's secrets or escape from the Blue Dragon Society?" The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader asked in return, "Does it feel good to be hunted?" Chu Xiu shook his head. The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader said calmly, "If you betray the Blue Dragon Society, your fate will be 10 times worse than this, maybe even 100 times worse." Lowering his head, Chu Xiu slightly raised his eyebrows. If he really betrayed the Blue Dragon Society, his strength would be 10 times stronger, maybe even 100 times stronger. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said to the Blue Dragon Society's branch leader, "May I ask how I should address you, Sir Branch Leader?" The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader casually waved his hand and said, "Most people in the Blue Dragon Society don't have names, only code names. I'm the branch leader of the Heavenly Sin branch. Since you are my subordinate, just call me branch leader. If you meet other branch leaders in the future, just add their name in front." Looking at the surrounding corpses, the Heavenly Sin division leader shook his head and said, "Killing is not allowed. Come with me. Those people won't be able to find you. Come with me, those people won't be able to find you." Chu Xiu followed behind the Heavenly Sin branch leader. Feeling the other party's aura, Chu Xiu could already confirm that the other party was definitely an expert who had gathered the 3 flowers, condensed the 5 qi and finally reached the realm of being one with the world. Above the 5th level of qi controlling was the 3rd level of spirit condensation. Once one reached the 3rd level of spirit condensation, one would be at the Grandmaster level. As for the realm of being one with the world, one would be the strongest under the Grandmaster level. Such an existence was only a branch leader of the Blue Dragon Society, and the Blue Dragon Society had 36 Big Dipper divisions, so there were at least 36 branch leaders of this level. Of course, with the addition of the people from the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters, this number was definitely much more than 36. Chu Xiu could also be considered to have a preliminary understanding of the Blue Dragon Society's strength. Although it could be said that Chu Xiu joining the Blue Dragon Society now was half-forced, in reality, this might not be a bad way for the current Chu Xiu. The Blue Dragon Society's strength was so strong that even a branch was enough to temporarily keep Chu Xiu safe for a period of time. The Heavenly Sin Branch leader had the strength of being one with the world, so his perception was incomparably strong. He easily led Chu Xiu around the martial artists of the Jianghu who were chasing him, all the way to the Mount Tai County south of the Linzhong County. That was where the Heavenly Sin Branch was located. At this time, the people of the big sects who were searching for Chu Xiu also learned about Chu Xiu from the martial artists who escaped from the taverns. They also knew that there were already 4 internal Aura Realm martial artists chasing Chu Xiu, so they were very relaxed because this time, Chu Xiu definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore they weren't in a hurry to rush over. Instead, they first informed Nie Donglu to come over before rushing over together. The group of people walked toward the dense forest along the tracks that had been washed away by the heavy rain. However, not long after they stepped into the forest, they saw scarlet blood flowing out. At first, they didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that they had either injured or killed Chu Xiu. However, the more they walked, the more they felt that something was wrong. Why was there so much blood? The 4 of them weren't perverts. Could it be that they had dismembered Chu Xiu's body into 1,000 pieces? Otherwise, why would there be so much blood? Nie Donglu frowned. He felt that something was wrong and immediately ran forward with his people. What appeared in front of them wasn't Chu Xiu's corpse, but 3 corpses and a pile of disgusting minced meat. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. What exactly was going on? 4 inner invulnerability experts teamed up to kill Chu Xiu, but they were killed by Chu Xiu instead? Nie Donglu didn't make a fuss like the others. Instead, he sent someone to check the corpses with a gloomy face. After that person looked at the corpses, he whispered into Nie Donglu's ear. Nie Donglu said in a low voice, "Among the 4, 1 was killed by Chu Xiu. The other 3 were definitely not killed by Chu Xiu. One of them was killed by a sword chi through the chest, another was crushed by a powerful gang chi, and the last one was beheaded by a sharp gang chi. All 3 were killed with one move. Clearly the attacker was more than 1 realm higher than them. The opponent could be a great expert in the 3 flowers realm, the 5 chis realm, or even the oneness of heaven and man realm." Everyone present looked at each other. Experts of this level were no longer nobodies in the Jianghu. They were people who could start their own sects no matter where they went. Not those small sects but the big sections. According to their investigation, this Chu Xiu was born in the wilderness and had no connections. So who killed them and saved Chu Xiu? Nie Donglu frowned. He had a feeling that things had gotten out of his control. Looking at the people in front of him, Nie Donglu said in a low voice, "Everyone, Chu Xiu's whereabouts will continue to be listed as wanted. However, change it from a manhunt to a search. Don't do anything for now." Everyone present nodded. With such a thing happening, they didn't dare to do anything. Just as the large sects of the Linzhong Commandery were in a state of bewilderment, Chu Xiu followed the Heavenly Sin Branch leader to a barren mountain in Mount Tai Commandery. Beside a seemingly unremarkable cave, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader knocked on the wall a few times in a seemingly random manner. Immediately, a door appeared in the wall. "Go in. This is where the Heavenly Sin Branch is located." Chu Xiu followed the Heavenly Sin Branch leader. Beyond the door was a different world. There was actually a large underground palace. Going down to the bottom of the underground palace, there was a practice field in the center. There were close to 100 warriors in black warrior clothes. However, perhaps because they were in the branch, they didn't wear their iron hats. Instead, they carried them on their backs and hung their iron masks on their waists. Seeing the Heavenly Sin Branch leader return, the 100 people immediately cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, branch leader." The Heavenly Sin Branch leader nodded and asked a skinny old man in his 60s with a funny goatee, "Ghost Hand King, have you taken care of the Lu, Chao, and Yen families?" The Ghost Hand King nodded and said, "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." The Heavenly Sin Branch leader nodded and pointed at Chu Xiu beside him. "I've taken care of the remaining members of the 3 families. This is Chu Xiu who I just recruited into the branch. I'll leave him in your care. Let him rest for a while and tell him the rules. Then, give him a mission to determine his rank." With that, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader turned around and left. After the Heavenly Sin Branch leader left, the rest of the people only looked at Chu Xiu for a bit before leaving. They either went to carry out their mission, practiced on the practice field, or returned to their houses to cultivate. If it were any other place, a person personally recruited by a branch leader would naturally attract a lot of attention. However, this was the Heavenly Sin Branch. This was because 80% of the people present were personally recruited by the Heavenly Sin Branch leader into the Blue Dragon Society. As a newcomer, Chu Xiu behaved very humbly. He cupped his hands towards the Ghost Hand King and said, "Greetings, Senior. The Ghost Hand King was older than him and also had the strength of an inner aura realm martial artist. Most importantly, Chu Xiu could feel a trace of pressure from him. They were both in the inner aura realm, but among all the inner aura realm martial artists that Chu Xiu had seen, the Ghost Hand King's strength could be said to be the strongest. The Ghost Hand King looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of interest in his eyes. Chu Xiu? That Chu Xiu who is wanted by the righteous manor? TSK, he's not simple. To be wanted by the righteous manor and being chased by so many martial artists in the Linzhong region and still be able to live until now, he's not an ordinary person. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, being chased by others is nothing to brag about. Moreover, this time if it wasn't for the branch leader, I might have been forced into a dead end. The Ghost Hand King waved his hand and said, there's no need to say more. If you're capable, then you're capable. Although our Heavenly Sin branch is currently lacking people, the branch leader won't bring in all the weaklings. Otherwise, if we lose face for the Blue Dragon Society, it won't look good for the branch leader when the higher-ups blame us. Since this is your first time in the branch, you don't have to accept any missions for now. Let me first tell you about our Blue Dragon Society, or rather, the Heavenly Sin branch's rules and things to pay attention to. Chapter 86. Assassins did not necessarily have to be extremely cold and ferocious. At the very least, the Ghostly Hand King standing in front of Chu Xiu had a smile on his face most of the time. He looked a little comical and gave people a feeling that he was very harmless. However, Chu Xiu knew that when he was killing people, he would definitely have this smile on his face. Ghost Hand King gave Chu Xiu a detailed explanation of the rules of the Azure Dragon Society, as well as some of the rules of the Sin Division. In fact, Chu Xiu already knew a lot about it from the storyline of his previous life. It was just that Ghost Hand King was telling him more details. Although the Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization, they were both good and evil. To put it simply, the Blue Dragon Society would kill people from the righteous path or the evil path. In any case, as long as you could pay the price, the Blue Dragon Society would dare to kill anyone. Actually, the most interesting thing was the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Ordinary assassin organizations would first investigate the strength of the person they wanted to kill. Then they would ask for a price based on the strength of the person. However, the Blue Dragon Society did the opposite. The Blue Dragon Society didn't set a price for killing people. It was up to the employer. However much the employer paid, the Blue Dragon Society would send the assassin to kill the target. If it was successful, then it was successful. If it failed and the Blue Dragon Society people were killed, then the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't take revenge on the killer. Instead, they would take revenge on the employer. From the perspective of the Blue Dragon Society, it was because the employer didn't investigate the strength of the person they killed. Either that, or the employer didn't pay the price, causing the assassin sent by the Blue Dragon Society to be killed. Therefore, the target of revenge by the Blue Dragon Society wasn't the killer, but the employer. It was because of this rule that people who hired the Blue Dragon Society to kill people were very cautious. They would investigate the strength of the other party and prepare more resources than usual. Only then would they dare to hire the Blue Dragon Society to kill people. Otherwise, if they didn't kill the person, it was very likely that they would be killed. In Chu Xiu's opinion, this was quite clever. The person who had set this rule in the past was simply a genius. Normal assassin organizations would have to negotiate with their employers, and some would even complain that it was too expensive. However, the Blue Dragon Society was different. Those employers were afraid that if they didn't take enough money, the assassins that the Blue Dragon Society sent out wouldn't be strong enough, and accidents would happen during the assassination. Therefore, they would try to take as much money as possible. In this way, the price of the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society was directly raised to the #1 position in the underworld. As for the reward for killing someone, most of the time the Blue Dragon Society headquarters took 30%, the assassins took 50%, and the leader took 20%. However, because the Blue Dragon Society was spread throughout the entire pugilistic world, the situation was different, and the authority in the hands of the leaders was also different. Thus, in some places the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters would get quite a bit, but the assassins would get less, while the leaders would get more. Of course, the Heavenly Sin branch still strictly followed the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Originally, the Heavenly Sin branch had very few people, so the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch naturally had to win over the assassins under him. After introducing the rules of the Blue Dragon Society, the Ghost Hand King told Chu Xiu about the origin of the Heavenly Sin branch. The entire Heavenly Sin branch only had around 100 people, which was a little too shabby. Other than the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch, who was an expert in the one with the heavens realm, the strongest of the others were only in the physical invulnerability realm. In fact, the original Heavenly Sin branch was very strong. There were thousands of people, and there were also many experts in the three-flower realm and the five-chi realm. However, it was a pity that 3 years ago the Heavenly Sin branch was forcibly annihilated. Almost all the assassins in the branch were killed. That was why the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society sent the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch here and asked him to rebuild the Heavenly Sin branch. The Ghost Hand King was an old member of the Heavenly Sin branch. When the Heavenly Sin branch was annihilated, he was outside on a mission and escaped the disaster. As for who killed the Heavenly Sin branch, the Ghost Hand King didn't know. He had a vague guess, but he didn't dare to say it. In fact, even if he didn't say it, Chu Xiu could more or less guess it. Even if the Blue Dragon Society was only a branch, it wasn't weak. To be able to annihilate a branch of the Blue Dragon Society, other than the Northern Yin Dynasty, it would be the Mortuary Manor, the Northern Snowfall City, and other top forces in the pugilistic world. After roughly explaining these things, the Ghost Hand King said, "Actually, the rules of the Heavenly Sin branch are even simpler. You only need to know one thing, and that is to absolutely obey the leader's orders. As long as you remember this, everything else will be easy." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded. He only knew that this Heavenly Sin branch leader wasn't someone who would settle down in the original plot. Now that he looked at it, the other party's desire for control was also very strong. The Ghost Hand King continued, "Within the branch, everyone can call each other by name. However, when we go out on missions, not many people are willing to reveal their real names. So, we all have a code name for each other, so it's convenient to communicate with each other when carrying out missions. Of course, not everyone has a code name. The assassins of the Blue Dragon Society have a total of 9 levels. The highest level of mission you have completed is the highest level of assassin you are. For a branch like ours, normally a level 7 mission is the highest we can go. We can't complete any higher. Level 1, 2, and 3 assassins don't have code names, only numbers. Only those who have completed level 4 missions are qualified to have a code name, and they can draw a picture on their mask." The Ghost Hand King took out the mask on his waist and waved it in front of Chu Xiu. There was a picture of a clown drawn on it. "My code name is the Ghost Hand King. As for my real name, it's no longer important. After being called Ghost Hand King for more than 10 years, even I have forgotten what my real name is." As he spoke, the Ghost Hand King pointed at a handsome but expressionless young man with a heavy sword on his back. He said, "This person is the cruel sword Yenbu Gue. He is in the Qi-controlling physical invulnerability stage and is one of the strongest assassins in the Heavenly Sin branch. This guy usually likes to stand in a corner and stare blankly. However, once he makes a move, TSK, the scene of him killing people can make people vomit. Anyway, this guy has a psychological problem, so don't provoke him." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. To be able to join the Blue Dragon Society as an assassin, how many of them didn't have psychological problems? As he spoke, the Ghost Hand King pointed at a young martial artist meditating in the middle of the training field. There was a strange golden pattern on his mask and he said, "This is Tangya. His name is Tangya and his code name is also Tangya. Anyway, he's a weirdo. In the entire branch, apart from the branch leader, no one knows where he came from. He is also in the Qi-controlling physical invulnerability stage. In the entire Green Dragon Society, there were only 2 physical invulnerability realm martial artists. Including the Ghost Hand King, there were 3 inner invulnerability realm martial artists. The other 2 were the Wolf King, who had a wolf's head painted on his mask, and the Fire Slave, who obviously didn't look like someone from the Central Plains. He seemed to be from the West regions and his mask was painted with fire patterns. 2 physical invulnerability stage and 3 inner invulnerability stage. This kind of strength was already very strong in Linzhong Commandery. It was even stronger than the Yu family of Bailing that had been chasing after him previously. However, it was a pity that in a branch of the Blue Dragon Society, this was a little shabby. After introducing the general situation to Chu Xiu, the Ghost Hand King said to Chu Xiu, "After joining my Blue Dragon Society, there are still some greeting gifts. The Blue Dragon Society headquarters refined Azure Dragon spiritual pills that are 6 transformations. With your current strength you can get 2 of them. Also, I will send the clothes and masks of my Blue Dragon Society to your house later. After you rest for a few days, come back to accept the mission and confirm your assassin rank." Speaking up to this point, the Ghost Hand King looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should only be one step away from the inner invulnerability stage. To be able to step into the inner invulnerability stage at such a young age, you can even be stronger than most of the young talents on the Longhu list. Hearing the Ghost Hand King's words, Chu Xiu immediately understood what the other party meant. The Ghost Hand King's attitude towards Chu Xiu was indeed not bad. However, the person in front of him was a veteran assassin who had been in the Blue Dragon Society for more than 10 years. He had killed countless people in his lifetime. If he was really as amiable as he was now, he would have been killed long ago in the middle of a mission. Right now, his attitude towards Chu Xiu was so gentle and his explanation was so detailed. In fact, there was only one reason, and that was because of Chu Xiu's strength. Although the Heavenly Sin branch of the Blue Dragon Society was small, it was clearly divided into two groups. Obviously, those martial artists who hadn't stepped into the inner invulnerability stage and didn't have a code name were one group. As for the Ghost Hand King and the other assassins who had code names, they were another group. Dragons didn't make friends with snakes. Before their strength reached the level of the Ghost Hand King and the others, they had no interest in accepting these people. However, Chu Xiu was different. In the outside world, Chu Xiu already had a great reputation. Moreover, his strength had already reached the peak of the innate realm and was about to break through. When Chu Xiu reached the inner invulnerability stage, he would be in existence at the same level as them. Befriending Chu Xiu now was the same as befriending one's future companions. After understanding the Ghost Hand King's thoughts, Chu Xiu didn't feel anything against it. On the contrary, he felt that this kind of thing was very normal. What kind of strength, what kind of treatment? Wanting others to look at you differently without strength, this kind of protagonist treatment was something that Chu Xiu didn't think he would have. Chapter 87. The Ghost Hand King handed the elixir and Chu Xiu's clothes to Chu Xiu and left. Chu Xiu took the 2 Azure Dragon Spirit pills and looked at them. He didn't see anything special about them. However, the power of the elixir was definitely stronger than an unrefined elixir. Last time, a 6th Revolution Purple Leaf Dogwood caused the 4 forces of the Cold River Prefecture to fight. It could be said that even Chu Xiu was attracted by the Purple Leaf Dogwood, so he specifically intervened in this matter. A 6th Revolution elixir caused the blood of several Xiantian realm warriors to spill on the spot. But now, Chu Xiu used his cultivation that was close to the inner aura realm to exchange for 2 6th Revolution elixirs. This was the foundation of a big force. Moreover, as an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, you could also accumulate the rewards you earned and then go to the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society to exchange them for cultivation resources or even cultivation techniques. Chu Xiu joining the Blue Dragon Society was actually half-forced, but as for the others, some of them even wished for it. For some people who were born cruel and merciless, they would kill people anyway. In some places they would be chased after killing people, but in the Blue Dragon Society, killing people could also be exchanged for benefits, so why not? Putting aside the thoughts in his mind, Chu Xiu directly took the 2 Azure Dragon Spirit pills and began to break through to the inner aura realm. With the glazed golden thread goo, Chu Xiu didn't need to worry about his injuries and refining the elixir. He only needed to focus on breaking through to the next realm. It had to be said that the glazed golden thread goo was really worthy of its name as a treasure. Although it wouldn't let you soar to the sky directly, it would provide a shortcut on your road to the sky, allowing you to fly faster and more effortlessly. The 3 Xiantian realms of body refinement and the 5th level of Qi controlling realm. When one reached the 5th level of Qi controlling realm, the foundation was more important than when one was in the Xiantian realm. It was just that Chu Xiu had never seen an internal aura realm martial artist that was too strong. Most of the internal aura realm martial artists were indeed very strong, but they were not strong enough to make Chu Xiu, who was in the innate realm, despair. Of course, this was normal because the 2 realms of inner aura realm and physical invulnerability realm had the biggest gap between the same level. Of course, this was normal because the inner aura realm and physical invulnerability realm were the 2 realms. Without a good foundation or a poor cultivation method, some of the weaker physical invulnerability realm martial artists could only release their gang qi a few inches outwards. Their power was limited. As for the stronger martial artists of the physical invulnerability realm, it was possible for them to unleash a sword aura of a few feet or even tens of feet. All of this depended on the strength of one's genuine qi and control over one's gang qi. Internal aura shield was the first step of the 5th tier of qi controlling. It was also the first step to condense aura shield and control the qi within one's body. After taking the Azure Dragon Spirit pill, the pill's energy was continuously absorbed into Chu Xiu's body and the glass gold thread goo. Then the glass gold thread goo began to feed Chu Xiu's energy, transforming the qi into strands of sharp astral qi that swam in Chu Xiu's meridians. At this moment, in Chu Xiu's mind, all the meridians in his body had been revealed to him as the gang qi flowed. It was abnormally clear. This feeling was very magical. There was only one feeling that Chu Xiu had when he entered the inner strong state, and that was control. Using stellar energy to control his entire body was the power of qi, and also Chu Xiu's own power. Stretching out his hand, Chu Xiu condensed his stellar energy in his hand, causing it to emit a faint glow. Putting his hand deep into the ground, Chu Xiu's hand sank into the marble floor in an instant, like stabbing tofu. This was the power brought about by the inner strong state, and it was also the most intuitive power of stellar energy. In the past, when Chu Xiu fought with Su Chongyang came in from the outside and deliberately made a show of force, condensing stellar energy in his legs. Every step he took had the weight of 1,000 pounds, and the ground shattered inch by inch. This was one of the simplest ways to use stellar energy. At that time, Chu Xiu felt it was a little magical when he saw that scene. But now, if Chu Xiu wanted to create that scene, it would be a piece of cake. After all, the Xiantian skill that Chu Xiu cultivated was much stronger than Su Chongyang's inner strength. Chu Xiu still wanted to condense stellar energy outside his body, but his stellar energy was still too weak and could not be condensed at all. Just being able to attach it to the surface of his body was already the best he could do. It's going to take time. From the inner strong state to the physical invulnerability, this stage not only took time, but also consumed all kinds of cultivation resources. Step by step, the stellar energy was condensed to an incomparably strong level. Only then could one truly release the stellar energy and step into the physical invulnerability. However, for the current Chu Xiu, he was already one step ahead of others. Because of the glazed golden thread goo, Chu Xiu only took less than a day to step into the inner aura realm. For the remaining time, Chu Xiu was not in a hurry to come out of seclusion. Instead, he cultivated the Heavens Exterminating Earth Exterminating Soul Shifting Technique and the Heavens Exterminating Earth Exterminating Great Purple Sun Hand. The situation was similar to what Chu Xiu had guessed. With the power of the glazed golden thread goo and the enhancement of the mental strength brought by the Heaven Extinguishing Earth Extinguishing Soul Shifting Technique, he could indeed temporarily suppress the backlash of the Avicii Dao's 3 blades. However, this was only the first blade and it was used in a state where there was no one around. When Chu Xiu really fought with someone, it was still unknown what would happen. When Chu Xiu came out of seclusion, the Ghost Hand King happened to be here. To be precise, the Ghost Hand King had not left. He was in charge of handling some miscellaneous things in the Heavenly Sin branch. He did not participate in most of the individual missions and only participated in group missions. Seeing that Chu Xiu had come out of seclusion and had successfully broken through to the inner strong state, the Ghost Hand King smiled and said, "I knew it. With your previous strength, it would not be difficult to smoothly advance to the inner strong state. Now you can take on a mission. After you complete it, it will be your assassin level." There was a stone tablet in the middle of the underground palace's training field. From the bottom to the top, it was filled with paper. The paper was filled with the contents of the mission, the employer's reward, and so on. Assassins who wanted to take on a mission could directly take the paper from the stone tablet and contact the employer according to the contact information on it. At the moment, there weren't that many assassins from the Azure Dragon Society in the necropolis. There were only about 50 of them, and when they saw Chu Xiu coming out of seclusion, they couldn't help but look at him curiously. Some of them were impressed by his young age, some were provoked, but most of them didn't care. Excluding the Ghost Hand King, there were only 2 assassins who were above the innate realm. One was the strongest assassin that the Ghost Hand King had evaluated as Cruel Sword, Yen Bugue. However, although he was looking at Chu Xiu, his eyes were still emotionless and very stiff. The other one was Fire Slave. Fire Slave looked like someone from the western region. He had brown hair, blue eyes, and a high-nose bridge. He always had a faint smile on his face. The Ghost Hand King had told Chu Xiu his name before. A long string of pronunciations in the western region language made Chu Xiu's head spin. Anyway, in the Blue Dragon Society, it was fine to just call him by his code name. Seeing that Chu Xiu was about to choose a mission, Fire Slave walked over with a smile on his face. "Brother Chu Xiu, I'm the most experienced in choosing a promotion mission. Just give me a simple one." The killing methods of the Blue Dragon Society are different from those of the outside world. We'll take some time to get used to it. As for the assassin's rank, it doesn't matter. At worst, I'll just earn less money in the first few months. Living is the most important thing. Why do I have to sacrifice my life for money? This fire slave's accent was very strange. Although it was Central Plains Chinese, it was different from the Northern Yan accent. It was probably a Western region accent mixed in. However, his point of view also made Chu Xiu a little surprised. An assassin who often fought on the line between life and death actually told him that staying alive was the most important thing, and that money was secondary. This was a little novel. The Ghost Hand King waved his hand and said, "Don't cause trouble here. There are so many assassins in the Blue Dragon Society, and it took you 3 times to complete the ranking mission. You could have easily finished it, but you just had to drag it out. You even dragged it out until the branch lord was getting impatient. Aren't you being cheap?" Fire Slave said with dissatisfaction, "I wasn't dragging it out. I had to find a 100% success rate without any accidents before I made my move. In the entire Heavenly Sin branch, who can be more stable than me? I have a 100% completion rate, even higher than that guy Yen Bugue." The Ghost Hand King coldly snorted and said, "But the number of times you completed the mission is the least." After bickering with the Fire Slave for a while, the Ghost Hand King looked at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu, the missions are all here. They range from level 1 to level 5. Missions that are level 5 and above either require multiple people or the opponents are too strong. We can only leave it to the branch leader to handle." Although Fire Slave isn't reliable, what he said is also reasonable. You don't have to be too anxious about the ranking mission. You can choose a simple mission for now. For example, the strongest target for a level 3 mission is the Xiantian realm. With your strength, you can deal with several people at the same time. I suggest you consider it. Chapter 88. Looking at the missions posted on the stone tablet, Chu Xiu was also thinking about how he should behave in front of others in the Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu joined the Blue Dragon Society under coercion, and he didn't plan to be a shady killer for the rest of his life. Therefore, according to Chu Xiu's previous thinking, he should keep a low profile. However, after hearing about the various benefits in the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu changed his mind. Even if he had to leave sooner or later, he had to reap enough benefits before leaving. Advancing from the inner invulnerability realm to the outer invulnerability realm was a painstaking process. What Chu Xiu needed wasn't time, but a large amount of cultivation resources. Carrying out missions, then exchanging the rewards of these missions for cultivation resources, allowing his strength to improve, and then carrying out more powerful missions. This was the path that Chu Xiu should choose. Moreover, feeling the slightly provocative eyes behind him as well as the slightly judgmental eyes of the Fire Slave, Chu Xiu also understood what kind of place he was in. Assassin organizations didn't have that many schemes. What everyone valued was actually only one word: strength. For example, Yen Bugue, who was standing in the corner without saying a word. Everyone looked at Yen Bugue with awe. If Chu Xiu wanted to temporarily establish a foothold in the Blue Dragon Society division, he could only rely on strength. Looking at the mission papers on the stone tablet, Chu Xiu looked through them one by one. Missions below level 4 were all prepared for warriors below the inner invulnerability realm. Although Chu Xiu was 100% sure that he could complete them, he didn't even look at them. Level 4 missions also had different levels. Naturally, the difficulty of killing one inner invulnerability realm was different from killing a group of inner invulnerability realm warriors. Even missions with more than 10 inner invulnerability realm warriors could be classified as level 5 missions. Chu Xiu took a few glances at the level 4 quests, but none of them satisfied him. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly noticed a familiar name on the list of a level 5 quest: the Yu clan of the Biling. Chu Xiu had already started a feud with the Yu clan of the Northern Mountain when he was at Liang Mountain. Later on, when Chu Xiu had snatched the secret box from Yu Luchuan, the Yu clan was also the one who had chased after Chu Xiu the most ferociously. The feud between the two parties had long been irreconcilable. It could be said that Chu Xiu of the Yu clan would have to deal with them sooner or later. Now that there was a quest, wouldn't it be killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Hence, Chu Xiu did not hesitate and immediately removed the Yu clan's mission list. Seeing that Chu Xiu had actually chosen a level 5 quest, the crowd immediately went into an uproar. Even Yen Bugue, who had been silent all this while, stared deeply at Chu Xiu. A level 5 quest would involve more than 10 inner Aura Realm warriors or 1 outer Aura Realm warrior. This Chu Xiu had just stepped into the inner Aura Realm and he chose this level of quest. Was he looking for death? Fire Slave looked at Chu Xiu strangely and said, "Brother Chu, are you kidding me?" Ghost Hand King also shook his head and said, Brother Chu, I advise you to be more cautious. Just like what Fire Slave said just now, a level 5 quest is not a big deal. You have the strength of an inner aura realm warrior, so it won't affect your position in the branch. But a level 5 quest is not a joke. You must know that the Yu clan's elder is an outer aura realm expert. Although there are not 10 inner aura realm warriors in the entire Yu clan, there are at least 7 or 8 of them. This kind of strength is considered to be one of the more difficult level 5 quests. Usually only Yen Bugue Tangya or a group of people would choose this kind of quest. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Thank you for the reminder, but I still want to choose this quest." Ghost Hand King looked at the quest list and suddenly frowned. "Brother Chu, you can choose a level 5 quest, but I advise you to change it. This quest is a little special. The employer's salary is not enough to hire a level 5 assassin. At most, it would be a level 4, but the target of the quest is a level 5. The employer knows the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. If the quest fails, the employer will also be retaliated by the Blue Dragon Society. But the other party still insists on doing this. It's obvious that they want to perish together with the other party, or they want to use all their strength to kill the other party. The client wanted to take the other party down with him, but the assassins of the Azure Dragon Society didn't want to throw their lives away. That's why this mission has been hanging here for a few days now. Tangya and Yen Bugue have no intention of accepting it. I was just about to tell the leader about this and cancel the mission list." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. His main goal was to take action against the Yu clan of the Biling Mountain. The quest was just a side effect, so Chu Xiu directly said, "There's no need to change it, I'll choose this." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Ghost Hand King didn't say anything. He only lightly shook his head. Since Chu Xiu wanted to die, he naturally wouldn't stop him. The Blue Dragon Society wasn't a charity. Unfortunately, it wasn't easy for leader to find a suitable warrior to join the Blue Dragon Society. The warrior's strength wasn't bad, but his brain wasn't clear. Fire Slave just laughed a few times in confusion. He didn't even say goodbye and directly turned around to leave. He actually wanted to make friends with Chu Xiu. In other Blue Dragon Society branches, the assassins might have conflicts because of snatching quests, but in the Heavenly Sin branch this kind of thing didn't exist at all. Because there were so many quests that everyone couldn't even pick one. So the few warriors in the Heavenly Sin branch who were above inner invulnerability had a good relationship with each other. Everyone was familiar with each other and they could cooperate better when carrying out group quests. Maybe one of them could save you at a critical moment. But now, in the eyes of Fire Slave, Chu Xiu's behavior was arrogant and conceited. He thought that just because he snatched something from Ye Donglu and Bai Wuji, he could really be compared to those elites on the Longhu list? What a joke. In the past, Nye Donglu had destroyed the 18 Black Cloud villages which had thousands of people, but he only succeeded because he befriended hundreds of young elites in the pugilistic world. Now, Chu Xiu wanted to destroy the Yu family of Biling alone? What right did he have? The other assassins who didn't have a code name looked like they were watching a good show. They were all born in the wilderness and they didn't think they were worse than Chu Xiu. Even if they hadn't reached inner invulnerability yet, they would sooner or later. They were just a little jealous that Chu Xiu had joined the Blue Dragon Society as an innate stage, but he was accepted and treated politely by the Ghost Hand King and the others. Seeing that Chu Xiu had made up his mind, the Ghost Hand King didn't stop him anymore. He just said, "If that's the case, then I wish you success in your mission, Brother Chu. The contact place of the employer is on the mission list. You can discuss the specific information with the employer yourself. By the way, when you kill someone, if you want, you can also leave the mark of the Blue Dragon Society or your own mark. An assassin also needs a reputation. The more famous you are, the higher the chances of an employer asking you to take action in the future." Of course, although the Ghost Hand King said that, he still didn't think that it was possible for Chu Xiu to destroy the Yu family of Biling. The Blue Dragon Society didn't have a rule where one would be killed if they didn't complete the mission, but the Blue Dragon Society never kept useless people. No one wanted to experience the consequences of a low mission completion rate. Moreover, the danger of this mission wasn't small. Chu Xiu nodded and put away the mission list without saying anything. In a place like the Blue Dragon Society, everything was decided by strength. Since Chu Xiu wanted to borrow the power of the Green Dragon to cultivate, he first had to show absolute strength, a strength that would make everyone look at him in a different light. The Blue Dragon Society had a special method to contact the employer. The contact method was already written on the mission list. As long as Chu Xiu left a mark in a small town in Daesan County, the employer would see it. Chu Xiu left a mark in the small town and pointed out that he was in a broken temple on a barren mountain outside of the town. He waited for the employer to arrive. He also wanted to see who the Yu family of Bailing had offended this time to be killed by an assassin. Staying in the broken temple, Chu Xiu was bored, so he studied the mask and the iron bamboo hat on his face. The conical bamboo hat and mask with the insignia of the Azure Dragon Society weren't just used to conceal one's identity. Chu Xiu also discovered something interesting. The mask and the conical bamboo hat were actually forged from some kind of meteoric iron and some other materials. Although there were no arrays on the mask and the iron bamboo hat, wearing the mask and the iron bamboo hat could block the opponent's perception to a certain extent and increase one's concealment. For an assassin, this was undoubtedly a good treasure. At this moment, there was a movement outside the broken temple. The old door was pushed open and a woman walked in. Chapter 89. The one who appeared in front of Chu Xiu was a beautiful, but very strange woman. The woman in front of him looked to be in her 20s. She was extremely beautiful and wore a purple dress. Her hair was wet from the fog in the forest and stuck to her pale and sickly face. She gave off a feeling of exhaustion as if she would collapse at any moment. What attracted the most attention were her eyes. Although her body seemed to be extremely exhausted, her eyes seemed to be burning with flames. It was the wrath of extreme hatred. Even Chu Xiu couldn't help but be surprised by the astonishing hatred. "Are you the killer sent by the Blue Dragon Society?" The woman opened her mouth. Her voice was very hoarse, and it seemed a little awkward compared to her beautiful appearance. At the same time, there was no expression on her face. Chu Xiu could only see the hatred in the woman's eyes. It was an almost endless hatred. Slowly tidying up the mask and iron hat on his face, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "That's me." The woman laughed bitterly, lowered her head and muttered, "My commission is still not enough. The Blue Dragon Society only sent an inner Aura Realm warrior, but an inner Aura Realm warrior can't kill a few people from the Yu clan." Chu Xiu knocked on the conical bamboo hat on her head and said indifferently, "Whether or not I can exterminate the Yu clan is my problem. Since I have accepted your mission, I naturally have a way to complete it. So, what you need to do now is to hand over all the information about the Yu clan to me. Of course, I'm also a little curious about the enmity between you and the Yu clan. However, it's fine if you don't want to say it. The Blue Dragon Society doesn't have the habit of inquiring about their employer's privacy. I'm just curious." The woman lowered her head and said indifferently, "This is no longer a private matter. As long as you go to the Bailing mansion and ask around, many people know about me. It's fine to tell you." Saying that, the woman told Chu Xiu everything about her and the Yu clan. This woman was Mu Zi, the young lady of the Mu clan of Bailing Prefecture. She was also Yu Luchuan's fiancée. Both of them were already at the stage where they were going to hold an engagement banquet. The Yu clan of the Bailing Prefecture was the overlord of the entire Bailing Prefecture. In fact, they were one of the few greatest forces in the entire Linzhong County. Although the Mu clan was slightly weaker than the Yu clan, they were not too weak either. Both clans were in the northern mountain manor. They would either fight against each other or work together. It was that simple. Hence, in the end, after the Yu clan and Mu clan's discussion, both sides decided to unite by marriage. This way they could avoid unnecessary conflicts and increase the strength of both clans. Originally, this kind of marriage was very normal in the Jianghu. Yu Luchuan was the Yu clan's first wife's son. Although he did not enter the Longhu leaderboard, he still had the strength of an innate rancor, which was not bad. Moreover, this Mu Zi was extremely beautiful. Forget about the Bailing Prefecture, even in the entire Linzhong County, there were few people who could compare to her. Moreover, Mu Zi was quite talented as well. She had already reached the innate rancor, so the two of them were suitable for each other. However, the problem arose not long ago when Yu Luchuan traveled to the south of Yan Kingdom. Chu Xiu had seen Yu Luchuan's appearance before. Although this brat was a little useless, he was very handsome. Calling him a gigolo would be an insult to him. After traveling around the south of Yan Kingdom, Yu Luchuan actually hooked up with the daughter of one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the divine martial sect leader of the south of Yan Kingdom, Yan Huainan. One was the daughter of the divine martial sect leader of one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, while the other was the daughter of the Mu clan, a small clan in the Bailing Prefecture. There was no need to think about who to choose between these two. Originally, if the Yu clan only wanted to curry favor with the divine martial sect, they could just break off the engagement with the Mu clan. At most, their reputation would be tarnished. However, who would have thought that the Yu clan would be so cruel and merciless? In order to protect their reputation and also because they coveted the Mu clan's properties, they casually framed the Mu clan with a crime. Before the Mu clan could even react, the Yu clan had already been annihilated. Mu Zi's eyes shone with hatred, but there was no expression on her face. Even the tone of her voice did not change at all. I don't blame you, Luchuan, for wanting to curry favor with the divine martial sect. If you wanted to break off the engagement, so be it. There were no feelings between us in the first place. The Yu clan was powerful, and the Mu clan did not dare to say anything after that. But why did the Yu clan want to annihilate the Mu clan in the end? I will never forget that day. The Yu clan used the excuse of discussing the engagement to sneak into the Mu clan and launched a sneak attack. In the blink of an eye, the Mu clan had already turned into a river of blood. If it wasn't for the Mu clan's old housekeeper, Uncle Su, who risked his life to bring me away, I would have died there too. Of course, the current me is no different from a dead person. A few days ago, Uncle Su had already died from his severe injuries. Before he died, he told me a few of the Mu clan's properties and treasures in case of emergencies. Uncle Su asked me to leave Linzhong County, leave Northern Yan, and change to another place to live. As she spoke till here, Mu Zi's eyes were already bloodshot, but I won't be satisfied until I see the Yu clan's people die. When Chu Xiu heard this, he raised his eyebrows. The Yu clan was really ruthless. They were still discussing the marriage, but in the blink of an eye, they had already annihilated the entire clan. Of course, from Chu Xiu's point of view, the Yu clan was still a little too petty. This way they could indeed maximize their benefits, but in the end they would lose their reputation. Don't treat the people of the pugilistic world as idiots. Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell what was going on with the Mu clan. The Yu clan's table manners were a little too ugly. They had just hooked up with the divine martial sect, but in the blink of an eye, they had already annihilated their soon-to-be in-laws. This kind of thing was not good to hear. At the very least, the other forces in the Bailing prefecture definitely did not have a good impression of the Yu clan. When they worked with the Yu clan again, they would have to be very careful. Of course, the Yu clan themselves might not care about this. From their point of view, they had already successfully hooked up with the divine martial sect. Now that they had annihilated the Mu clan and seized the Mu clan's properties, their strength had increased greatly. Of course, they would not care about what other people thought of them. Chu Xiu flicked the bamboo hat on his head and said, "Your entire clan is dead? Don't worry, you'll see it. Moreover, the Yu clan will feel that some things are scarier than death. By the way, give me all the information about the Yu clan. Since you hate the Yu clan so much, I believe you should have a lot of detailed information about the Yu clan." Mu Zi handed over the information about the Yu clan to Chu Xiu. It was indeed very detailed, so detailed that it made one's hair stand on end. Even the information and personalities of some of the Yu clan's collateral disciples were included. There was also detailed information about the entire Bailing prefecture, the other forces within it, their relationship with the Yu clan, and so on. After the death of the only old servant who had protected him, only the heavens knew how Mu Zi had managed to gather all this information in detail. However, to Chu Xiu, this information would be of great help to him. It would make his plan more secure. Standing up, Chu Xiu walked out of the dilapidated temple and said indifferently without turning his head back, "You don't have to stay here for this period of time. You can hide around the Bailing prefecture. Within a month, I guarantee that you'll hear the news of the Yu clan being annihilated." Watching Chu Xiu's silhouette disappear, Mu Zi raised her head. The hatred in her eyes temporarily disappeared, replaced by a hint of confusion. She knew about the Yu clan's strength. But now, an internal Aura Realm warrior actually told her to annihilate the Yu clan within a month. Was such a thing really possible? However, this assassin from the Blue Dragon Society was her biggest hope. She had already found all the financial records of the Mu clan, but at most she could only hire a level 4 assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. However, Mu Zi had already made up her mind. If the people from the Blue Dragon Society could not annihilate the Yu clan, she would do it herself. Even if she could not annihilate the Yu clan, she would still kill Yu Luchuan and perish together with him. The Bailing prefecture was located at the edge of the forest county. It was not part of the central region. The reason why the Bailing prefecture was called the Bailing prefecture was because it was originally a mountain. However, the mountain near the south side was too steep and buildings could not be built there. Therefore, people built a prefecture on the north side of the mountain, and named it the Bailing prefecture. Because it was built on a mountain, the roads to the Bailing prefecture were not that convenient. There was only a mountain road in the north, while the south side was a cliff. Moreover, the mountain road was surrounded by dense forests. It was not much better than the small paths in Wei County's Shangshao Mountain. Logically speaking, with such a location, the Bailing Prefecture should only be a small prefecture. It was not considered powerful, but in reality the Bailing Prefecture was very prosperous. The number of warriors there was more than that of an ordinary prefecture, and it was stronger than an ordinary prefecture. As for the reason, it was actually very simple. Although the Bailing Prefecture was a mountain city and it was inconvenient to travel, the feng shui of the mountain was very good. The qi of heaven and earth was very rich, and it was very suitable for warriors to cultivate. It was not inferior to some famous mountains and rivers. The reason why the Yu clan could have their current strength was also because of the good location. This caused the Yu clan to become stronger with each generation. They had developed from a small clan that only had an innate rancor to a large clan that was famous in the forest county. When night fell, Chu Xiu was also dressed in black. As if he had blended into the night, he entered the Bailing Prefecture. Chapter 90. Because of the divine martial sect, the Yu clan had successfully destroyed the Mu clan and seized the Mu clan's property. Now the Yu clan could be said to be blessed with double happiness. Even though it was already midnight, the Yu clan mansion was still brightly lit and people were drinking and having fun. Chu Xiu stood on top of a tall building not far from the Yu clan mansion. Dressed in black, wearing a black conical bamboo hat and a black iron mask, Chu Xiu's entire figure seemed to have merged with the night. At this time, Chu Xiu had also discovered the benefits of the Blue Dragon Society's attire. The bamboo hat and mask had the effect of shielding one's senses. Adding on the fact that Chu Xiu was dressed in black, it was indeed very difficult to be discovered at night. Of course, if he was at the level of Heaven Sin Branch leader, this so-called attire would only serve as a reminder of his identity. If he attacked in broad daylight, he could kill whoever he wanted. He just had to crush them with his strength. There was no need to distinguish between day and night. Looking at the Yu clan mansion, Chu Xiu was like a ghost, quietly sneaking in. At this time, in one of the Yu clan mansion's courtyards, two Yu clan blood condensation realm warriors carrying a pot of wine walked out unhurriedly. Looking in the direction of the mansion, one of them couldn't help but curl his lips and say, "Is it the first branch making trouble again? Tiske, isn't it because Yu Luchuan climbed up to the divine martial sect leader's daughter? What are they so proud of? A big man relying on his own face to climb up to others, isn't it shameful?" The Yu clan warrior beside him shook his head and said, "Sixth brother, don't ever say this in front of others. Otherwise our third branch will be out of luck." Among the Yu clan's 9 branches, although the first branch's name was the highest, they weren't strong and didn't have much power in the clan. This time, Yu Luchuan climbed up to the divine martial sect's young Mississippi. The other branches can't compete with them. Maybe in the future the Yu clan will be controlled by the first branch. We should just tuck our tails between our legs for now. During this time, don't provoke the first branch. Let them be complacent in the Yu clan, let them be. Let's go and drink our wine. The Yu clan was now a famous aristocratic family in the entire forest prefecture. Furthermore, the Yu clan had been passed down for several generations in the northern mountain prefecture. After several generations of inheritance, the Yu clan was no longer as pure as before. The entire Yu clan was also divided into factions. Not counting the branch families, just the direct bloodline of the Yu clan could be divided into 9 branches. In the past, the 9 branches were not divided into big or small. The Yu clan's old ancestor would sit in the middle and everyone would take turns to control the power. However, now that Yu Luchuan had climbed up to the divine martial sect, the whole Yu clan's face was lit up. The so-called power-taking turn seemed to be a joke. The first branch that Yu Luchuan was in was obviously preparing to monopolize the power. The warrior from before continued to grumble. However, after saying a few words, the people beside him did not respond. He subconsciously turned around, but there was not a single person beside him. This scene immediately made the warrior's hair stand on end. Just as he was about to say something, a hand covered his mouth, and a crimson blade directly pierced into his chest. Pulling out the red sleeve blade, Chu Xiu shook off the blood on the blade and moved the 2 corpses together. For the current Chu Xiu, not to mention the blood condensation realm warriors, even if it was an innate rancor, not many people would be able to withstand a single move from him. Moreover, after stepping into the inner supreme aura stage, Chu Xiu also discovered that he could perfectly control his aura and strength. When he first stepped into the innate rancor stage, Chu Xiu discovered that the aura on his body was a little too conspicuous. In the eyes of some experts, his sharp aura was like an unsheathed long sword. But now that he had reached the inner supreme aura stage, Chu Xiu could completely control the power of his true qi. He could restrain his aura, allowing him to be more hidden during assassination. Just like just now, he had already killed one person, but the other martial artist did not even realize it. Chu Xiu dipped his hand in the blood and drew an abstract dragon pattern next to the two corpses. It was the same golden dragon pattern on his iron bamboo hat. This was the symbol of the Blue Dragon Society. And this was not the end. Chu Xiu wrote the word Mu next to the dragon pattern. Just as he was about to leave, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something and left another bloody handprint on the ground. After doing all this, Chu Xiu left directly. Moreover, Chu Xiu did not stay in the Biling mansion at all. Instead, he went directly into the dense forest of Biling Mountain. The next morning, when the servants of the Yu clan got up early to clean the courtyard, they suddenly saw the corpses on the ground. They were so scared that they screamed in horror and quickly informed the others of the Yu clan. In an instant, the entire Yu clan was in an uproar. It was not that the Yu clan could not have people die. It was normal to be killed in the Jianghu, but the problem was that they were killed in their own clan. This was simply a slap to the Yu clan's face. Therefore, in less than a quarter of an hour, the Yu clan's elder, the physical invulnerability realm expert Yu Henian, and 8 inner supreme realm warriors of the Yu clan gathered here. Of the 9 branches of the Yu clan, 5 had inner supreme realm warriors. As for the other 3 inner supreme realm warriors, one was from a branch of the Yu clan, and the other 2 were the Yu clan's right-hand men. Actually, the Yu clan still had one more inner supreme realm warrior, but because he was killed by Chu Xiu when he was chasing after Chu Xiu, there were only 8 of them left. Seeing the corpses of the 2 warriors, the Yu clan's 3rd branch's head, Yu Dongxing, had a gloomy expression. This was because the 2 people who died were the clansmen of his 3rd branch. However, after seeing the marks left by Chu Xiu on the ground, the expressions of all the Yu clan's people changed abruptly. Blue Dragon Society. That blood-red dragon pattern was too familiar. They all knew the classic symbol of the Blue Dragon Society. And that blood-red Mu word was even more glaring, as if the spirits of the dead who had died in the Battle of Annihilation had crawled out from the underworld to seek revenge. The 3rd branch's Yu Dongxing glanced at the 1st branch's Yu Donglin and said with a gloomy expression, "It was done by the Mu clan's surviving members. They actually invited people from the Blue Dragon Society." The ones who were responsible for annihilating the Mu clan were the Yu clan's 1st branch. The ones who took the lead were Yu Donglin and his son Yu Luchuan. In the end, not only did they not kill all of them, they even came back for revenge. Naturally, the 1st branch had to take responsibility for this. Yu Donglin immediately waved his hand and said, "That's not right. The Mu clan's people are all dead, how could there still be surviving members?" Yu Dongxing sneered and said, "Big brother, did you forget that the Mu clan's girl's corpse has never been found? Don't forget, although the Mu clan's strength is not as good as our Yu clan, their history is not shorter than ours. Everyone knows that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. If the Mu clan's girl had escaped, she could have used the things left behind by the Mu clan to invite the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society to kill her." Yu Donglin frowned and said, "That's not right either. You should know the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Even if the Mu clan gave up all of their assets, the assassins they invited would not be able to destroy our Yu clan. With the things that the Mu clan left behind, they could only invite a level 4 assassin at most. Moreover, it's only one. How could they destroy our Yu clan?" Yu Dongxing glanced at Yu Luchuan and said, "Big brother, you seem to have forgotten something. This matter was proposed by your 1st branch from the start. You lied to the Mu clan, and the first to launch a sneak attack was also your 1st branch. If the Mu clan's girl invited an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society, who do you think she would want to kill the most? The other party might not be able to destroy our Yu clan, but a level 4 inner aura realm assassin could kill Yu Luchuan." Yesterday, Yu Luchuan was drinking and having fun in the main room, so the assassin couldn't find the target. Therefore, this time our 3rd branch's people died blocking the arrow for your son. When he said this, Yu Luchuan's face immediately turned pale. The people from the other branches also looked at Yu Luchuan. Whether it was the marriage alliance with the divine martial sect or the destruction of the Mu clan, the ones who benefited the most were the 1st branch's people. At first, there were even people who opposed to the destruction of the Mu clan, but in the end, Yu Henian made the final decision. They didn't dare to say anything and could only do as he said. Just now, the reason why third brother Yu Dongxing was so angry was not only because his third branch's people were killed, but also because he wanted to strike a blow to the first branch's arrogance. Seeing that the disputes between these few branches were getting more intense, to the point that they were about to quarrel, Yu Henian coldly snorted and said, "All of you shut up. What kind of storms have our Yu clan not seen before? How could an inner Aura Realm assassin from the Blue Dragon Society scare you to this extent? Have you forgotten the rules of the Blue Dragon Society? Don't be afraid. As long as we get rid of the assassin, the ones who will suffer the most are the Mu clan's descendants." When he said this, apart from Yu Luchuan's expression, the others didn't say anything. Just like what Yu Henian had said, although the Blue Dragon Society's assassins were strong, as long as you could block them and kill them, the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't bother you. Instead, they would take revenge on the employer. This was because the employer paid a low price and underestimated the target's strength, causing the Blue Dragon Society's assassins to be injured. As long as the Yu clan survived this time and didn't let Yu Luchuan be killed, they wouldn't need to care about the Mu clan's descendants. The Blue Dragon Society would take care of them. Most people knew the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Therefore, unless it was a kind of irreconcilable hatred, very few people would ask the Blue Dragon Society for help. This was because the Blue Dragon Society was a double-edged sword. If they couldn't kill others, they would have to kill themselves. At this time, a Yu clan's disciple suddenly asked doubtfully, "What does that bloody handprint mean?" The Yu clan's eldest brother glanced at it and said casually, "The Blue Dragon Society's assassins have their own code names. That bloody handprint should be the assassin's code name. I've never heard of any assassins in the Blue Dragon Society using a bloody handprint as their code name. I reckon that the other party is a nobody in the Blue Dragon Society. Don't worry about him, search with all your might. At the same time, strengthen the security at night." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.